Welcome to a sparkling new podcast from Mike Parry and Mike Graham. We're the two Mikes.
Actually, it sounds even better when you do it Dullsville, because when you try to be happy and excited and energetic, you sound pathetic.
Thanks.
Lots of people give me free pints in pubs just because they like me being there.
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the two Mikes on talkSPORT. It's all kicking off this morning in the football world of hypocrisy. People are shocked that Jurgen Klopp met up with Virgil van Dijk before he should have done over a potential transfer to Liverpool. And Diego Costa says nobody wants him at Chelsea. This is after he asked to leave and go to China. 08717 223344. Why on earth is anyone surprised by either of these stories? Also coming up on the show, Henry Winter is joining us from the Times to lift the lid on the Parry years at the FA. That should be very interesting indeed. Plus we've got to ask Porky, the one place for invaluable career advice, the solving of personal problems, and the best business tips in the Western world. You're listening to the two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT. We are the two Mikes, and I'm delighted to say it's time to say a very, very good morning on this beautiful summer's day to Mr. Mike Porky Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Very good morning to you, Mike. And, of course, it is an historic day in the life of our nation.
It is.
Historic because we're here, so that's historic enough.
Yeah, it certainly is.
But
2 days in a row. 2 days in a row.
No, a day, a night, and a day in a row.
Yeah, well, never mind about all that.
Yeah.
You're going to confuse the heck out of everybody.
Not confusing anybody.
Every time you come on, you keep telling them when you're going to be on next.
Well, they
it's
like to know.
It's like some kind of Tourette's you've got.
No, it's not Tourette's at all.
You know,
mate.
yesterday you opened the show with when we were going to be on next.
Yeah, well, you know, people like to know. I
think they're very confused. But we can confirm we will be doing an election night special, kicking off at 1 a.m. after Julie Hartley-Brewer on Talk Radio has set the scene. We will be bringing you all the results as they happen throughout the course of the night with a whole host of very, very good guests.
Yes. Mild bladderation will follow at the Savoy Hotel, we hope, for breakfast.
I'm sorry, I don't know why you're obsessed with telling everybody what we are about to do every single second of the day.
Because
nobody cares.
They don't need to touch that dial over the next 36 hours,
yeah,
okay?
Right. Okay, well,
that's
they
a good thing about it.
They wouldn't generally anyway.
Anyway.
Can we not talk about the football, please?
I want to talk about the football.
The hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy you were talking about in football looms large, does it not? Because everybody knows that the expression tapping up is not a tapping up anymore. It's the way business works in the football world. When you're going to pay £100 million for a player, a manager, I believe, has the right to find out whether that player is fully and wholly committed to playing for his club. And the only way you find that out before you agree the deal is have some communication with the player.
Exactly.
So I think you should scrap the rule. You've got to scrap the rule. It's a ridiculous rule to say that a manager of a buying club cannot independently approach the player of the selling club until the chairman of the two clubs have agreed to enter negotiations. It's too late by then.
I'm not so sure that you should change the rules, because the rules are in place for a reason. The rules are there in order to stop any kind of corruption. The rules are there to stop the temptation, perhaps, that certain bigger clubs might be able to pull over on smaller clubs.
Yes.
And I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is everybody pretending that it's so shocking that it goes on.
Yeah.
Because people bend the rules all the time.
Yes.
And that's what's happened here. I don't think Jurgen Klopp should be in any way given a hard time for what he's done.
I don't think he should.
I don't think he did anything particularly wrong.
Yeah.
You know, if he was bending the rules, I think that's acceptable. Liverpool have had to hold their hands up and say, well, now we can't go through with the transfer.
Well, it will go through, though, won't it?
Well, you don't know that.
I believe it will.
Well, you may think it will.
I believe at the other end of the transfer window, that deal will still go through.
Well, Liverpool have said now that they're no longer interested in Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, I know, but you find in business a lot of deals are put on hold when you hit a problem or an issue or something like that, and then you resolve it, and then you come back.
I think the problem is that they've made a little bit of a blunder because information got out into the public domain, which perhaps shouldn't have done.
What I find astonishing is that people who have Liverpool in their hearts and all that, if they knew this was going on, I don't know why everybody started talking about it.
Well, because the belief is that Liverpool started leaking the story out to the press, which is where the stories did first appear.
Yeah.
And so, once Liverpool have done that, then you think, well, if that's what they've done, then there's no harm in sort of, adding to that.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose quite innocently people are saying, well, we all know now that Kloppy met the player, Van Dijk, you know. But that should not have been in the public domain. But having said that, I believe that the way this law is, by the way, not to smoke cannabis to start off with, okay? But however, over the years, what's happened is there's been a sort of a liberalisation of a law. It's still against the law to smoke cannabis in this country, and yet, very few people ever get done for it because there's been a liberal interpretation of that law.
Well, it's also been decriminalised to a large extent.
And decriminalised to a certain extent. And I think the same view within football and the laws of football has been taken on the tapping up rule. Now, I'll tell you a story which I've told before.
Yeah.
And which I've been told several times, and which is in circulation in football.
Yes.
Jolyon Lescott was an Everton player when he was on the training pitch, and David Moyes, who was then the manager, asked him in front of other players whether or not he'd been receiving phone calls from any other managers,
Right.
And
because he had heard that he was being tapped up by Manchester City, right?
He did, yeah. And Jolyon was non-committal. And he said, I want an answer, Joe. And he said, what else do you want me to say, boss? You want me to say that I've been taking phone calls from Manchester City's manager?
Yeah.
In the same way I used to take phone calls from you at home when you were Everton manager and I played for Wolves.
Yeah.
And that inherently is the issue.
Well, that is the issue.
It happens all the time.
But of course it happens all the time. And when you look at somebody like David Moyes, who takes players sometimes from one club to another, are you seriously telling me that when he leaves the first club to go and manage the second club, he hasn't had a conversation before he goes with the likes of Marouane Fellaini and with Leighton Baines, in fact, who ended up not going to Manchester United.
Yes.
But he must have had the conversation to say, listen, when I get over to Man United, I'd love it if you could come with me.
Of course.
That's normal practice.
You would assume that conversation must have taken place.
Yeah.
And that's why, to be honest, I immediately said when it was announced that David Moyes was going to Manchester United, he should have stepped down there and then, because his influence then, his mind then was concerned about improving Manchester United, and if that meant disimproving Everton, that was one of his responsibilities.
Well, indeed, absolutely right. Now, we want to hear from you about this. I don't think Liverpool have done anything particularly wrong, but I don't want to see the laws change like Porky does.
I do.
He wants to see the rules just taken away altogether, deregulate the business, and let everybody talk to everybody else all the time.
You tell me the problem of a manager ringing up a competitive team striker and saying, "Hi, mate, it's Fred Onga here, and I'm the manager." Just for one of
the guy would go, "I've never heard of you," and put the phone down.
No. I'm
Fred Onga. Get lost. Stop calling me.
I'm the manager of something like.
Why don't you just put a real name to a real club?
Because I don't want to impinge anybody's name.
More hypocrisy from you then.
I'm the manager of Ashbury Town. With that
Shoebury Town.
No, Ashbury Town.
Shoebury Town.
That massive team in North Wales and our huge stadium.
Do you mind if I give the number out? Because I'm now getting bored rigid listening to this ridiculous analogy.
Would you like to come and play for us? What is the problem with that?
Well, I'll tell you what the problem is in a moment. But first, here's the number, 08717 22 3344. The problem with that is that you are putting ideas into the head of a young man who, for example, might be thinking to himself, I could go from making 20,000 a week to 200,000 a week.
What's wrong with ambition?
Well, there's nothing wrong with ambition, but that would be described as turning the head of a player. We've all seen Diego Costa and how he played when he thought he was going to China for 600,000 a week. Suddenly drops his form.
Right.
People get distracted if they think they're going to go and do another job. If you were sitting here and somebody called you in a break and said, would you like to come and work for, Chinese FM?
Yes.
We'll pay you $2 million a month or something like that. You would come back, your head would be all over the place, you'd be staggering about, you'd be so impressed with yourself that you wouldn't be able to do your job. And that's why it's wrong.
But I would not have done anything illegal because in our business, you can do that.
I'm not saying that.
In
but
the
what
advertising
I am saying,
industry,
hang on, I'm not saying there's anything illegal. But what I'm saying is that in the football business, that's why they have the rules in place.
No, you haven't even made the case. In the advertising industry,
what do you mean I haven't made the case? I've just made the case.
You haven't made the case. Doesn't impress me. I don't believe those human emotions.
Pop quiz, Porky. I don't exist to please you. I don't care whether I'm impressing you.
Those human emotions do not register with me. What registers with me?
That's because you're not human.
Is ambition, right? So in the advertising industry, you've got a guy there. He's just made one of the world's most sensational adverts for
Mr. Odinga.
No, for a new product like something like chocolate-flavoured...
Pants?
No, chocolate-flavoured... What sort of food is not chocolate-flavoured at the moment?
Pasta.
Chocolate-flavoured potatoes, right?
Yeah.
And he's made a huge advert.
Actually,
and
I've had
billboards.
chocolate-flavoured potatoes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it's
funnily enough, in a restaurant in Borough Market.
Oh, right, OK.
I had it was mashed potato with white chocolate.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
And it's on huge billboards all around the world. And then the boss of another advertising agency says, who made that advert? He must come and work for us. They bring him in the number. He rings him up and he says, look, it's Tom...
these ridiculously long and drawn-out analogies are boring me to tears.
It's Skip Bornhooter here,
Skip Bornhooter.
Boss of advertising agency A, and I want you to come and work for us, pal. What about it, right? There's nothing illegal about that.
Sorry, I've lost the track of the argument now.
No, that's nobody else has. That's the competitive world.
Yeah, that's that's the competitive world. If you could work out what on earth Porky is on about, by all means, give me a call and explain it to me. 08717 223344. The bottom line is that I don't think Liverpool have done anything wrong. Porky thinks that they should do away with all the rules that exist to stop managers talking to players.
I do.
And players talking to other managers as well. Here's one from Dave, who's texted in or tweeted in at the two mics. I'm sure offers and deals go on pre-July, but this guy was at the bus stop, bags packed, before any agreed offer. Well, I'm not sure if that's absolutely true. We don't know if that's true. But what we do know is that Liverpool are now no longer going to sign Virgil van Dijk, and he's probably going to go to somewhere else, possibly Manchester City.
You are so naive.
If you're a Liverpool fan, you must not be too happy about that. 08717 223344. This is talkSPORT.
Now then, you are listening to the two mics. We're on talkSPORT, and we are, of course, with Wix. Right now, there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care.
Very, very true indeed.
Right.
James says this, all the shows you're doing lately, share prices in Red Bull must be increasing with Porky having to stay tanked up on it.
There's
a couple of pictures coming in of a load of Red Bull being delivered to talkSPORT Towers.
Bit harsh.
Stephen says, Porky's on one already. What's he going to be like after a 36-hour marathon? Make sure he pays for breakfast, MG.
Yeah, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Right, it says here, OK, it says, what does it say here? It says...
I don't know, what are you looking at?
It keeps moving. Right, OK, the two mics, take all the election boredom of the last month, double it, and it still isn't as boring as Mike Parry. What is he on this morning? What? Porky, get your act together.
Yeah.
That's a bit hard.
Also, Johnny says this, chocolate potatoes, Porky, I think they are called Easter eggs.
Yeah, well, they're not, are they?
Well, they look a bit like potatoes. And Leon says, do you have Skip Bourne Hunter's telephone number, please, guy? I'm looking for a career change.
Yeah, that's right, Skip Bourne Hunter.
Yeah, anyway, let's take some phone calls because a lot of people believe that tapping up is something that doesn't happen, doesn't go on.
Yeah.
Everybody who knows anything about football knows it goes on all the time. Yeah. So why do people get so worked up about it? Let's talk to Andy, who's a Spurs fan. Andy, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well indeed.
Well,
what do you want to say, man?
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you're dead right. Look, anyone that knows anything about football knows it goes on.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can go back, years. Look at Ferguson over Cristiano Ronaldo. Went mental and said Real Madrid have basically tapped Ronaldo up via the papers. Real Madrid did it to Luka Modric. Real Madrid have done it to other... Yeah, I'm just saying Madrid. I'm not
Gareth
saying
Bale.
they're the only ones.
Gareth Bale.
Gareth Bale, this Van Dijk thing, it also doesn't help, is the agents, because they get a cut of it. So, I'm just saying, scenario is, Liverpool want Van Dijk, Klopp gets hold of Van Dijk's agent, tell Virgil, this is how much we'll pay him, a week, okay, we'll sort out the other things, but we can't go any further. Virgil has got to put a transfer request in. Virgil goes to Southampton board. I'm really not happy. Southampton board. Sorry, Virgil, you signed a new contract. You're staying.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Then I'm not playing for your club no more. And then the big circle happens. He refuses to play. Liverpool basically are gaining, every day that he says he's not playing. Southampton are losing more patience and money because his value's going down. Liverpool gain more momentum of him going to him. Player wins, Liverpool wins, Southampton lose. And that is the way... the tapping up happens.
So do you think, Andy, then that Porky's right, that he will end up going to Liverpool anyway?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Really?
I think
because the fee will suit Southampton. It's like Lukaku. Agent Doan was saying yesterday. Everton could turn around and say, "Look, you're not going anywhere. 100 million, but 100 million suits Everton. So off you go." But say it was only 20 million. Everton would say no chance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It suits both clubs. When they come to this amicable.
Yeah. Andy, the scenario you've just given us is really what it means is that the player and the agent are one. So if you can make approaches to the agent, you're actually making an approach to the player directly.
Yeah, of course it is. Because they in the players' ear rolls these days, aren't they?
Exactly. Of course they are. Look, the agent represents the player. So if the agent gets a call, it's not against the laws of football. But the agent then immediately, if the player's sitting next to him, is relaying everything to him.
Exactly. But
so it's pathetic.
Yeah, but also, Mike, Virgil's agent has got a duty to Southampton.
Yes.
But obviously
yes, he has,
he's not doing that duty to Southampton, is he?
Well, I mean, does he though? Why does he have a duty to Southampton? He has a duty
to make sure they get the money.
Well, no, but he has a duty to his player. That's his
and he has
first
a duty to himself,
duty,
by the way,
and his own business himself. Yeah, I don't think he has a duty to the club that the player's in.
But Mike, he does, because when Virgil van Dijk was at Celtic, he was happy to take the money that Southampton were offering him. Going to Southampton. So now he goes there. He's got a duty. Virgil van Dijk signed a contract.
Yeah, I know, but I think,
5 years.
You've contradicted yourself now, Andy, because on the one hand you're saying this goes on all the time, and of course it goes on because there are no morals in football. You're now expecting agents to have morals. They don't.
Oh, yeah, no, but the thing is, the player and the agent will win always, because player power, as we know, is immense. Yeah. It's immense.
But Andy, you're right about the agent having a responsibility to Southampton, but it is, Mike's right, it's not a moral obligation, it's a business obligation. If the agent can pull that one off, right, then he will be used again by Southampton. They will want to do business with his players.
And I can't claim this as my own, because it's been suggested to me by Jim, who's tweeted me. Why is it that Southampton are always selling their players to Liverpool? Is there some kind of bizarre...
I think this would have been the sixth player in 3 years, wouldn't it?
What do you reckon, Andy? Is there some kind of bizarre sort of connection?
To me, it sounds like they both use the same agent.
Well, I don't think it's the same agents, but I mean, Southampton are the most unsuccessful selling club, if you see what I mean, or successful selling club.
Well, no, they're the most successful selling club,
but that's unsuccessful for Southampton and their fans. To be the biggest selling club is to be an unsuccessful selling club, isn't it? As far as Southampton fans are concerned.
You're getting me all confused again, Andy. I'm going to have to go for a lie down. Listen, let's go to Charlie, who's a Liverpool fan. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Oh, good morning to you, lads.
Yeah. What would you like to say, Charlie? What do you reckon? Are you disappointed?
Or double mic, whatever.
Yeah.
You made a comment earlier about the hypocrisy in football.
Yeah.
How very true.
Yes.
If I can refer briefly to on the pitch.
Yeah.
On the pitch, cheating is endemic.
Yes.
If they're not diving, they're indulging in the black arts. For example, I listened to Adrian Durham one afternoon, and he was absolutely furious. And for the first time, I heard a pundit or a presenter use the word dirty to describe the tactics of another team.
Yeah.
And that team, and I'm not going to name it because it wouldn't be fair, because all teams indulge in it, that team was targeting the best player on the opposing side.
That's right, to try and nobble him.
By fouling him in taking a different player.
Yeah, sort of fouling in rotation, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on that occasion, the referee was wise to it, and he sort of stopped and pointed in several directions. You fouled him there, you fouled him there. The next man, yellow card.
Yeah.
And, of course, a big thicko fouls him and gets a yellow card.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that particular team, and again, I'm not naming it.
Well, we know the game you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. And you know the player I'm talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
And when was the last time a club fined or suspended one of its own players for diving?
I don't remember that.
No, they never have done.
I don't think that's ever happened,
They never have done.
Never happens.
No, never happens.
I'm going to name the man because, anyhow, it surprised me because he's a prospective England manager. He's done a very good job at Bournemouth. And he defended one of his players stoutly for a tackle that every single pundit that I heard, talkSPORT, Sky Sports, condemned as a...
But how are you relating this? Charlie, to tapping up?
Well, I'm now coming to my other point.
Thank you.
It's all hypocrisy, that's what he means, isn't it, Charlie?
Clubs certainly apparently do nothing about the cheating on the pitch, but we're asked to believe that they behave with total honesty and integrity off the pitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is baloney.
I think you're absolutely right, Charlie. Thank you
dash.
very much indeed. Let's talk to Trevor, who's a Southampton fan, to see what he makes of it all. Trevor, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on a word that Mike's just used there, hypocrisy.
Yes.
I think it's pretty Hippocratic of Southampton to be taking this view on Liverpool's approach to Van Dijk. It's been plastered all over the papers.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're reading plastered all over the papers that Southampton are going to be getting rid of Puel. Now, shouldn't they be putting their own house in order first before they go having a go at another club?
Well, hang on, you're a Southampton fan, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by that? Do you want them to stop leaking to the press? Do you want to make sure that they keep Puel or what?
Well, it's just a ridiculous situation that they're having a go at one club, and it's in the papers, and it's in the papers about Puel as well. And surely they should be doing something to either quash the rumours or say, yes, we are going to get rid of him.
Yes, well, I mean, that's very possible. But I mean, the way that Southampton is run...
Well, they're not denying it.
But the way that Southampton is run has been a bit curious over the years. But what I'm wondering about is why they keep selling so many of their players to Liverpool. Why is it like they're allowing so many of their players to leave every single season? It's obviously a policy, isn't it?
Well, it seems to be, and it's not very good for the supporters because we're all wondering, now they're already got their season tickets up for sale for next season.
Well, exactly.
That's right, yeah.
Are we going to buy one or not? Who's going to be the manager? What players are going to be left for next season?
That's right.
And it must be thank you, Trevor, it must be very frustrating as well if you're a parent and you're buying your kids, the Southampton shirts with the names on the back.
Well, you normally do that actually at the start of next season, to be honest.
No,
I don't think there would have been a surge in Van Dijk.
You don't know when
shirts.
you normally do that
I
because
do,
you haven't got the kids. But the point is, if you buy...
There wouldn't be a surge in Van Dijk shirts, would there, in the last 2 weeks?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that if you bought a Van Dijk shirt for your son because he wanted one about 3 months ago, and he's now going to leave, and maybe you bought a Theo Walcott shirt for one of your kids, maybe you bought, a Mané shirt for one of your kids, maybe you bought a Lallana shirt for one of your kids, you're on a hiding to nothing, spending an absolute fortune.
Right.
Because they keep changing their players.
They certainly do.
See what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, that does happen in football quite a lot these days.
Well, yeah, but not as much as it happens at Southampton.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could be right. If you went around the Southampton Sales League of the last 2-3 years, you'd put together a Premier League winning team, wouldn't you?
You would.
Always used to happen to West Ham.
Yeah.
Always used to, for the last 20 years, West Ham have always said, if only we'd kept him, if only we'd kept Lampard, if only we'd kept Joe Cole, if only we'd kept all the great players that went off somewhere else. But football doesn't work like that. It's transient.
It certainly is. And what we're going to find out coming up next is Henry Winter's going to talk us through the year of the worst sort of stories coming out of the FA of all time, 1994-95 season. Guess why? Because Porky Parry was in charge of the FA. Here's a quick one from Jules, who's texted in or tweeted at the two mics. Rather than tapped up, can Porky be taped up so he can keep his gob shut?
Oh, that's very nice.
That's nice, isn't it?
Thank you.
This is talkSPORT. Cast your mind back to 1994-95.
Yes.
The season of hell in the FA.
It certainly was. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
But I did, considerable amount of work to try and ease the problems that were piling up for the FA.
Yeah. You joined the FA in about July of 94, right?
That's right, absolutely, yes.
As the head of communications.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Are you sure that's the right title?
Yeah.
Because we're going to speak to a very important man who remembers every single piece and iota of that year, right?
Well, I probably gave him a great deal of help.
It included the problems that Paul Merson came under after he admitted in November 94 he was an alcoholic.
I helped Paul solve his addiction.
Was also addicted to cocaine and gambling.
Yeah.
You also had Palace striker Chris Armstrong failing a drug test in February 1995.
Yeah.
He also had in January of 95, of course, Eric Cantona's famous Kung Fu kick.
I got to the hearing and worked on that one.
Yeah.
I was also at the centre of the riot in Dublin.
Dennis Wise convicted of criminal damage and assault relating to a fight with a taxi driver in London.
Which he later reversed, by the way,
in the riots in
Yeah.
Dublin, as you say, for the England game. You were left behind to deal with all the shellacking that you got for that. Arsenal manager George Graham sacked after nearly 9 years in charge. It was revealed he accepted an illegal payment from a Norwegian agent. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on.
Bruce Grobbelaar, of course, was accused, of being involved in money and games and that sort of stuff.
It seems to me that it was the most turbulent year ever
it was.
In the history of English football. And it can't be a coincidence that you were at the helm of the FA when all of these stories came to light.
I rooted out evil.
Let's talk to the chief football writer for the Times, Henry Winter. Henry, and I have to ask you the first question. Surely Mr. Parry was the worst thing that ever happened to the Football Association in England?
Bit harsh.
I'm not sure he was at the helm. I think he was below deck plugging the holes of a sinking ship.
That's very nice.
Remember, this was a completely different era. The FA at the time was in this extraordinary museum called Lancaster Gate, where all the post was read. Whoever the post was going to was read by someone else who checked it.
Right.
The chief executive at the time, Graham Kelly, would disappear at important moments to go off and play football in his England tracksuit in Hyde Park opposite, which was sweet because he loves the game, but occasionally there'll be some more pressing issues to deal with.
Well, it seems like about once a week at this point.
the whole sport sort of went into chaos when Mike was there. But in fairness, I was trying to look sort of back through my notes for some of the good things you did in that time, and I could actually find probably 1.5.
What?
I think you improved the FA Cup draw. Do you remember when they used to wheel in Sir Bert Millerchip?
Yeah, that's right. Who was so old, we used to call him Bert the Inert.
Bert the Inert, by Glanville's phrase. It was like Statler and Waldorf doing the FA Cup draw then, and I think you did try to sort of make it a little bit more sort of modern. Indeed. I also remember in Dublin, that horrible night in Dublin when the England fans rioted. You were actually in the England team hotel having a go at the FA's head of security. I think it was Adrian Titcombe at the time.
Indeed.
I think it was actually the night before when it was all beginning to kick off, and I was out on the town in Dublin, and you could see it already building there. And I think you, in fairness to you, Mike, were saying to the FA's head of security, you don't need to be in the England hotel, mate. You need to be out in town because it's all building with your sort of rotter head on from your Fleet Street days.
Absolutely.
So that was a good moment. But do you remember the day after the riot? You were back in the FA offices, all hands to deck. I think it was you and Claire Tomlinson were womaning the phones when people like me were calling in.
Indeed.
And all that was going on in the background, it's a classic FA, the Blazers at the FA, they were looking for Percy Rushton's raincoat.
That's right, they were,
remember that?
He'd left it behind.
Extraordinary old boy at the classic old Blazer, very sort of grassroots, kind-hearted, loved the game, did so much for the game selflessly. But there was the reputation of English football going up in flames after the terrible riot the night before in Dublin. And a lot of the FA bigwigs were just worried about where Percy Rushton
Pat, who was deputy to Mr. Kelly, the chief executive, had sent this email round. Emails were a new thing in those days, sent round. And it wasn't actually the raincoat, Henry. I can exclusively reveal it was the inside lining of the raincoat so that he didn't get cold. You know, the bit you zip in.
The bit you can take out.
And he left without it. But
let me just ask you a couple of questions, Henry, because we've had a few people tweeting in about Mr. Parry's role in some of these stories, because you, as you say, would have been quite frequently on the phone to him, trying to get tips and information out of him of some kind or another. I mean, basically, he's told us in the past that he used to meet up with quite a few of the Fleet Street's finest on a Friday, and over several bottles of wine would sort of impart various bits of information to them, which Graham Kelly was always rather surprised with appearing in the papers over the weekend.
Completely true. And it wasn't just Friday night.
yeah, that's right. It wasn't just Friday night.
It was every night.
Yeah, Glasnost. But Henry, when we first discussed you coming onto this feature on the show, you did make an outrageous claim about the night of the Eric Cantona incident. And, you know, I need a public airing of this to be able to deny it.
There were many stories about you, Mike. Was this the phone book night?
Well, you know, I didn't...
Yes, I'd like you to recount that because...
Okay, well, very briefly, everyone knows Eric Cantona sent off, jumped into the crowd, abusive Crystal Palace fan, and did the infamous Kung Fu kick. I was sitting, you know where that press box is, just slightly behind it, and we were all absolutely stunned. We knew what a big story this was. And I rang, I think, Mike, you were the duty, I think your title was senior press officer at the time. David Davis was director of communications. I rang you that night just to get a sort of reaction, or a steer, as we call it, off the record on what the FA's reaction was likely to be. And you said to me to pass on to the board.
I was at a very official dinner, by the way. I was at an official dinner, and this was 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Henry, while he's on his truth-seeking mission here.
Well, there's a very important dinner with a celestial deity coming up a few nights later, which I'll move on to. But you said the FA was absolutely furious with Cantona. We cannot have this stain on the game was the mantra of the FA at that time, and we're going to throw the whole phone book at him.
Yes.
So I turned around to everyone in the press box and I said, I think Mike means they're going to throw the whole law book at him. It looks like a lengthy suspension. So that could sort of filter through our copy for that night for the morning's papers. I think one person actually used the phone book rather than the rule book.
Yes, they did.
We didn't sort of credit you. It was just a sort of FA sources said. But do you remember when the Cantona Commission then met? You went out for dinner. I don't know whether it was Sopwell where the commission was, but you went out for dinner the night before. And do you remember who was sitting on the next table?
Don't be ridiculous. He doesn't remember who he had dinner with last night.
I was having dinner with David Davis, wasn't I?
and on the next table was the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Right, yeah.
I mean, only in football could this. I mean, I assumed you asked him, how many months or years should we give Cantona?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, I didn't realise immediately it was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and if I had done,
his garb give him away.
Well, no, he wasn't. He
wasn't wearing the mitre.
Yeah, no, he wasn't wearing his mitre. He didn't have his staff or anything like that. I mean, his pole or whatever it was called.
His pole.
Yeah,
His crook.
His crook. That's right. Yeah, but that was a little unfortunate. And of course, those sort of dinners were very, very important part of my work, Henry, because it was over those dinners that David Davis and I, cooked up the policy that was going to resolve the latest problem.
Well, do you remember, George Graham, on your QC, or the FA's QC then, was Brian Leveson?
It was indeed.
Obviously a big sort of media individual now. And there was this extraordinary moment when George Graham realised Brian Leveson was a huge Liverpool fan. And I think he confided either to you or David Davis. He said, I tend to do well against Liverpool.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, absolutely.
I remember seeing George Graham once at a golf do that I was at.
Yes.
And he came walking into the clubhouse with a big leather holdall. And everybody just burst out laughing.
Of course, yeah.
And he opened the bag and there's no money in it, guys.
No,
I mean, he always had a great sense of humour about it.
He did have a great sense of humour.
What a good manager he was, too.
He was a terrific manager. And do you know what? Couple of years later, we took George to a restaurant in London. We knew that he collected fine whiskies, so we let him taste about 6 or 7. Yeah. He went home, and his wife rang us the next day and said, he's never coming out for lunch with you again. I've never seen George in that sort of state. He had to crawl out of the car that you sent him home in. So
I take it you didn't throw the phone book at him then?
I didn't throw the FA phone book at George Graham, no. In fact, I was very able to help him with the inquiry.
Henry, stay with us, please, if you can, because we've got more details of Porky's life at the FA to talk about. The year of hell that the FA had, thanks to Porky, who was, of course, not the head of communications. We've now absolutely had it confirmed by Henry Winter, chief football writer of the Times. He was indeed the senior press officer.
On that day.
This is talkSPORT. This is the Two Mics on talkSPORT with Wicks. Right now there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care. We're talking to Henry Winter from the Times, of course, about the year from hell at the FA, 94-95. It was the year that Mike Parry was working for them in their communications department. Not quite as the head of it, but certainly involved with the leakage of several big stories that were going on. Bruce Grobbelaar, Paul Merson, we had Eric Cantona, Dennis Wise, George Graham. Let's talk to Henry once more. Henry, were you ever also in communicado with, or in communication, I should say, with Mr. Parry on any other sort of famous nights that you can remember having to put a call in? To him?
Well, one of Mike's jobs was to wait until the first editions dropped, and particularly under Terry Venables. Yeah. Terry was I think he was fascinated by the way the media worked, but he was also very interested in anything that was written about him. So I think, Mike, you or David Davis or one of your many minions used to go down to King's Cross and pick up the first editions of the newspapers, particularly the tabloids, just to see what was in them. And I think that's when you first found out about Grobbelaar. And which was just an extraordinary night, and you knew. I think you were up all night, sort of dealing with that one, because the moment that story broke, I think it was in the Sun. Then we were obviously all sort of calling you to get the FA reaction, and of course the FA then went into hid behind the sofa as it often did. And from what I remember, is all the individuals involved carried on playing.
Yeah, but I took the lead on that one because you're absolutely right. Graham Kelly had a sort of a very specific way of running the FA. But that was an extraordinary story because the editor of The Sun rang Grobbelaar at Manchester Airport as he was about to take off for South Africa and put it to him over the phone just like that. Yeah. And so it was an instant story because Mr. Grobbelaar couldn't give satisfactory answers to the questions as some were putting to him.
And was this completely, as it came as a complete surprise to the FA? You didn't know about it. You didn't know it was coming.
We didn't know anything about it at all. And that's the way it used to work, Henry. But funnily enough, one night when I couldn't get the papers from King's Cross, I woke up very early the next morning, got it, and the splash story in the Daily Mirror was Paul Merson throwing himself at us, at the FA, throwing himself into our arms, saying, help, help, help. He'd become addicted to cocaine. And again,
that book serialisation, wasn't it?
Well, no. What happened was we then wrote a book to try and sort of exonerate him and talk about the pressures and the battle against it.
When you say we wrote a book, what you mean, you and him?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
well, you ghosted it for him.
I did. Yeah, the Paul Merson book. I had to edit it.
Did you receive payment for that?
No, I did not. No, it was part of my duties. But But again, the thing was, Henry, do you remember the press conference when Paul turned up? Well, I tell you what, very famously, my left hand is very famous because what happened was, it was Paul Merson with George Graham one side, me on the other. Paul Merson started crying as he was, the mea culpa and telling everyone about these terrible problems he had. And he reached out, and then somebody's hand comes in with a box of tissues. Yeah. That is my hand.
Is it?
That's my hand and my right hand, my right wrist, providing Paul Merson with the tissue box.
I thought it was your left hand.
It could have been left. I can't quite remember. I think it was right.
You're ambidextrous, Mike.
I am ambidextrous.
So why did you bring the tissues with you?
No, we were in a hotel.
Yeah, I know, but you don't always have a box of tissues.
Well, I'd asked them for them. I've
so
got
you had
foresight.
asked for them?
I've got foresight.
You thought this might be coming?
Yeah,
You're not going to tell me that you suggested to Paul Merson that if he burst into tears, it'd be better accepted?
No, of course not. I wouldn't manipulate things like that.
No, just checking.
The thing with Terry was, Henry, you're absolutely right. I mean, Terry was the first England manager who wanted to get involved in, commercial business attached to the job. And I had no problem with that. I said, yeah, of course you can. But he had an extraordinary number of contracts. I think he was with Walker's Crisp before Gary Lineker. He had a deal with NCP, National Car Parks and all that kind of stuff. And so you can imagine how the FA would panic.
It was monetising the England manager's job.
It was monetising the England manager's job, but I had no problem with that at all. I thought commercially he's entitled to do it. But you can imagine how Graham Kelly reacted to seeing, pictures of Terry Venable in posters on big billboards around town, advertising watches and things like that.
Yeah. But the other thing about him, he was a good manager. But the extraordinary thing, Mike, from what I remember, your time at the FA coincided with all those wretched friendlies building up to Euro 96.
Horrendous.
In Norway. I mean, it was 0-0 and Shearer was playing up front and he wasn't scoring, and it was just, they were absolutely interminable. And then from what I remember, when you left, the sun came out and we started playing well.
Yeah, no, that did happen, I have to say, because they were distraught that I was leaving before Euro 96, because I left before the tournament started.
Well, I think we can probably
say
with a reasonable degree of certainty that almost every place that you've ever worked has always become happier the moment you've left it.
No, I would never say that.
The Daily Express was one.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
No, it wasn't. The circulation declined after I left, right?
Yeah, it declined while you were there as well.
No. I held it up and then it went down. But the thing is, Henry, in those days, of course, there was no communications machine within the FA, and so I'm going to actually defend myself here and say if I hadn't been there in that amazing year when everything sort of happened, everything went wrong, then there probably wouldn't be an FA anymore. I believe I saved the FA, Henry. I really do, because I think had it been down to Graham Kelly and all those people bumbling around, I mean, that Adrian you talked about, the head of security, he's a guy who used to turn up at the England training sessions and put an England kit on and go and train with the players. He thought that was part of his job.
You weren't there, fortunately. I think you'd left by then when the 8-foot pepperami sausage invaded training at Bisham Abbey.
No, I didn't see that.
I think you missed that. Yeah, no, that was a famous gate crashing incident. No, but I thought what David Davis did at the time was quite intelligent, because remember, it was a time of a fierce circulation war, particularly amongst the Red Tops.
Yes.
And so he brought in someone who had been in the trenches for that.
Exactly, that was me.
So I think there was an element of we sort of understood your language, you understood.
Did you have amongst your guys that you talked to in other papers, Henry, a sort of a timetable of when was a good time to call Mr. Parry and when wasn't a good time to call him? Like, for example,
how strong a quote you wanted? I always found just after 10 o'clock always worked if you wanted a strong quote.
Yeah, well, it did.
10 o'clock at night, obviously.
And I mean, the thing is, Henry, as you well know, I think I've told you, every Monday morning, I used to get the call from Graham Kelly. Graham Kelly used to get in extraordinarily early, about 6:30, because he wanted to beat the traffic in from sort of East Anglia, where he lived. But then he was always away by about sort of 4 o'clock.
And you couldn't get hold of anyone at the FA over the weekend.
No, you couldn't, no.
The oldest football association in the world, football at that time was pretty much mainly played at the weekend.
Yes.
You couldn't get hold of anyone.
Couldn't get hold of anyone. But every Monday morning, I'd go and knock on Mr. Kelly's door while he was eating his cornflakes, hello, Michael, and I say, now then, he said, now, while you're on, Michael, while you're here, now, I've been speaking to a few of my friends, and they say that there are a lot of really negative stories about the FA in the papers last week. Now, I'd like you to launch an immediate investigation and find out who the mole is. He says, somebody's leaking information to these gentlemen in Fleet Street, and I need to know who it is. And I'd say, leave it to me, Graham. He says, and by the way, how's last week's investigation going? I couldn't resist my instincts to tell people stories. I remember Harry Harris stitched me up once because I gave him a story about something, and he actually told everybody where it came from. I mean,
that's shocking, isn't it?
Harsh.
Now, we're almost out of time, Henry, so let's talk a little bit briefly, if we can, about the big game at the weekend, Scotland versus England. You're going up there, I believe. A lot of unease about the timing of the game at 5 o'clock, but there's nothing's going to be done about that, right?
Well, it's UEFA and its broadcasters. I'm afraid it doesn't seem particularly sensible. I noticed that Scotland aren't too impressed with it. I mean, the British police have got enough on their plates, as well as looking after a major sporting event. So I just hope the supporters, behave. We had incidents, some of it, well, obviously a lot of the chants in Dortmund. And then when England were there before in 2014, which was just before the Scottish independence referendum, and there were a few chants there. So I just hope that there are 4,500 England fans going out there. The majority of them go there to support the team, but there are a few, particularly younger. They came in during the Italy friendly, which the game doesn't need. So I just hope they show respect, because it's the oldest international fixture in the world, going back to 1872. It's an occasion to cherish. Plus, also there's some very important World Cup qualifying points at stake.
Sure. And are you in favour of the announcements from the FA this week, in which they've tried to clamp down? They've tried to bring more pressure to bear to keep the hooligans away.
Absolutely, and we talk about individuals in the FA and we give them a bit of stick, but Harpreet Robertson, who tries to keep a lid on the unrulier factions at the supporters club, the England supporters club, has done a fantastic job just trying to bring them in line. There's elements of self-policing. The Football Supporters Federation have been really important as well. But ultimately, it's down to an individual standing there at the game at Hampden Park, and if some idiot is chanting something abusive next to you, then you've got to turn around and stop it at source.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly right.
Totally agree.
Enjoy the game, Henry. And thank you so much
for
sharing those memories with us. I think a lot of people have been very grateful to finally get at the truth of what really happened in that terrible, terrible year where Parry was working for the FA. This is talkSPORT. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the two Mikes on talkSPORT. We've had a very interesting first hour of the show. Henry Winter from the Times has been telling us all about the year of absolute madness at the FA when Mike Porky Parry was there in the press office, of course, as the senior press officer.
Director of Communications, to all intents and purposes.
Well, he said that was David Davis's job, actually.
David was elevated to sort of, assistant chief executive.
I see.
Yes.
OK, well, anyways, I believe Henry, who is, of course, an esteemed and award-winning journalist with the Times, as you call it, the top people's paper, the Thunderer, he does not tell a lie. Coming up a little bit later on, ask Porky, of course, if you've got a question that you need answering, a problem you need solving, or a dilemma that you just can't sort out, tweet us at the two Mikes and you'll have it solved live on air. You're listening to the two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT. We are the two Mikes, and of course, we've got all sorts of things going on a little bit later on. We'll be doing a live election broadcast from 1 a.m. this morning. We'll be back
I'm so sorry.
Tomorrow at 10.
I thought when I told the audience about that in the first hour, you told me that they didn't need to know and I should shut up.
Yeah, that's right, because it's not that they don't need to know. It's not how you start the show.
Right.
You don't start the show by telling people what the next show is.
Oh, is that right?
You tell the people what the next show is when you're midway through the current show. Yeah, you don't really understand these things, being a complete and utter muppet when it comes to knowing about production.
I shall ignore all that. I call it forward planning.
No.
Something that you haven't got an idea about. You don't forward plan anything.
Really?
You couldn't plan the next 5 seconds of your life.
Really? So your planning is your strong point is? Do you think that's what it is?
I think it's one of the strong points.
I mean, if I turned you round twice, you'd be so confused you wouldn't know what to say. That's the case. Anyway, let's talk about Newcastle because there's a lot of football stories we need to get our teeth into. You said before we came on to do this show to Danny Kelly earlier on that you think Newcastle are going to be the surprise package of the next season's Premier League.
Well, I think
where did you get that from?
I think they could. I mean, look, I'm looking at a piece this morning, right, and it comes from a book that's going to be circulating shortly written by an old colleague of ours, Martin Hardy.
Oh, yes.
Martin Hardy was a great Daily Express journalist for many years.
Indeed.
He's written a book and it's been serialised in this morning's Daily Mail.
OK.
But, I mean, the headline says, can Newcastle win the Premier League? Why not? In a rare interview, Rafa Benitez on the title and treating his staff to presents. And it goes on to say how he rewarded his staff for a great season.
All right.
But, look, I see no reason why not. I mean, mean, first of all, look at Rafa Benitez's track record in football management.
Yeah.
It's one of the highest.
Well, he's done very well at lots of clubs he's been at.
How many men walking on earth can say, I was the coach of a team that won the Champions League?
Not very many.
Very few indeed.
Not very many.
Okay?
Yeah.
So he's one of those. Secondly, of course, he did the brilliant job that he was taken on to do at Newcastle. Eventually, only by skin's teeth, I admit, got them the championship of the championship, so to speak.
The championship of the championship.
Yeah, that's right. And took them back into the Premier League.
Yeah.
And now he's got to come back with an impactful season. Now, is there any reason at all why you can't say that Newcastle couldn't be the surprise package? Remember?
Yes. Well, I think there is, because I don't think you can name any player that they have used to get themselves to the top of the championship and coming into the Premier League who is going to be a surprise package, because many of them were playing in the Premier League when they got relegated, right? Yeah. If they're going to be looking to sign new players, I really don't think they're going to be above Manchester City or Chelsea or even Liverpool.
I didn't say that. I said the surprise package. They could be contending for 6 or 7 places.
No, but what I'm saying... Oh, you're saying the surprise 6. I thought you meant surprise package, i.e. they're going to win it.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Yeah, you did. You said that earlier.
I said the surprise package in the Premier League. I didn't say the surprise champions of the Premier League.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, surprise package to come 6th or 7th is not really a surprise, is it?
It is for a team that's been promoted from the Championship.
I don't think so. I mean, what they'd have to do is be better than Everton. What they'd have to do is be better than teams like Southampton, which is not that hard to do, I don't think, necessarily.
I suppose it will all depend, obviously, on the amount of money Rafa's allowed to spend by the owner, who is a notoriously good businessman. In fact...
Mike Ashley,
a notoriously successful businessman, a multi-billionaire, but whose track record on spending plans at Newcastle over the past have led, in part, to 2 relegations.
Well, certainly. And Rafa Benitez was already upset in January when he didn't get the money that he asked for. I mean, it was later proved, I suppose you might say, that they didn't need any money because they came up anyway. But the bottom line is that if he doesn't get the right amount of money that he says he's going to need in the summer, he's going to probably be unhappy. He might even leave.
Yeah, that could happen. But
and that would be an even bigger surprise.
Well, that's playing devil's advocate. What I'd like to know from the Newcastle fans is, are you expecting a great season, or have you now become used to the fact you are a yo-yo team and that actually the owners of Newcastle United are just happy to keep hopping back into the Premier League, and when they hop out again, they get the parachute payments, then they hop back and they get a season when they get the full payments. I mean, is that the attitude Newcastle fans now have? Do you settle for mediocrity?
I wouldn't be
Do Newcastle settle for mediocrity? Are you happy being mediocre? That's what I want to know. And if you could give me a call, please, and let me know.
Are you going to give the number out?
The number is...
Give it out slowly.
Excuse me. The number is 08717 22 33 44. I do not mangle mouth the number, because if I do, it means you don't hear what it is.
Exactly.
Okay?
Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've got a caller here from Liverpool who wants to talk a little bit about that transfer story we were talking earlier about Virgil van Dijk. Stefan is a Liverpool fan. Stefan, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Mike.
Yeah, morning.
Morning to the other Mike.
Yeah, hello, mate.
Yes, absolutely disgusted.
With what?
The old carry-on, really. If he's our number one priority target, surely you go about the right way. Get on to Southampton. We're interested in buying a player. It's all out in the media outlets, everything else. The figures keep on going up day on day. 50 million, 60 million, 70 million. Suddenly, it's a tap-up. It's just completely... Someone along the line has made a massive mistake, whether it's a leak. Either party, this could be, by the way. But, I'm absolutely disgusted. You know, he's a top player. If you're serious about getting him, do it right. First time, let's not make an embarrassment.
Sorry, what are you disgusted... Stefan, what are you disgusted about? I don't understand.
Well, basically, missing out potentially on the top player.
Right, OK, so you're very, very disappointed that you think the deal might have fallen through. But surely Liverpool have been used as a bit of an example here for something that's going on and is rife within the game, aren't they?
Well, the thing is, it's rife across the game.
Yeah.
Like, we're not just talking Europe, it's a worldwide problem.
Of course it is.
It's a reality of modern-day football, surely, Stefan. And
and with the pressures of the commercial partners and everything else, it's a big slap. We're not the only ones, but we've been brought up on this.
Yeah.
Virgil van Dijk is big business at the moment.
Yes.
Because he's wanted by a number of clubs. I honestly believe, if we would have gone around it the right way, how you should conduct yourself in business, then, we wouldn't be in the papers today as looking red-faced.
Yes. Well, you may well be right, Stefan. Thank you very much indeed. We'll take some calls coming up on Newcastle as well, of course. 08717333344. My point about Newcastle was not so much that they are competing with Manchester City and Chelsea and all those other clubs at the top, but if they're seeking to get some new players in, they're going to struggle, because we've said before, where are the players that Manchester City are going to sign? This pool of talent for 300 million. Where are all these players at Spurs and Liverpool and all the rest of the big clubs are going to be buying?
And we know that players do have reluctance to go any further north sometimes than the M25.
That may
unless
be.
It's Manchester.
That may be, but it's not about so much that. It's more about their buying power. 08717 223344. This is talkSPORT.
Now, of course, this is the Two Mics. We're on talkSPORT and we are with Wix. Now, right now, there's a 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care.
It's a very bizarre text coming in today.
Yeah, there are some very bizarre ones.
Some coming in at the Two Mics, of course. You can also send them at Mike Parry, at IROMG, at talkSPORT. Chris says this: Henry Winters confirmed what I always knew. Mr. Parry is a journalistic behemoth. Respect, Porky.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
What did you say no for?
I wasn't saying no.
Behemoth is a good word.
Of course it is. And I was going to say, no, I don't want to grab all the credit, but there is another similar one here, which says, and this is from Stephen in Hull, he says, I think Porky saved the FA and should take a lot of credit for the commercial success of football today. That comes from Steve in Hull. Steve, you're so right. You're so right. And then one
I think
from
Stephen
somebody...
should go and have a lie down in a dark room, to be honest.
One from somebody who doesn't quite understand. I thought Porky was Director of Communications at the FA, not Senior Press Officer. What's going on? Well, I have to say, who does that come from? That comes from... I can't see his name there, actually.
Can't see his name.
Yeah, but...
Minor,
OK. But what I have to say is I wore a lot of hats at the FA, because you've got to remember it was me against the world.
Well, it wasn't you against the world. It was you working for David Davis against the world.
And so I had a lot of responsibility. Senior Press Officer at one moment, Director of Communications, the next standing in for David Davis. David was Deputy Chief Executive at one point. It was a complicated command structure, but I was always there or thereabouts at the top of it.
Yes, I see. Well, as Derek in Pencoed says in South Wales, Porky is still suffering from delusions of Napoleonic grandeur. I think that's right. Let's talk Newcastle with Daniel, who's a Newcastle fan. Daniel, a very good morning to you. What would you like to say?
Hi, guys. Good show as always.
Thank you.
I'm a Newcastle fan. I just heard what you said about whether Newcastle fans are happy with coming up and down. Yeah. And I mean, you guys obviously know a lot about football. To even suggest that any Newcastle fan would be happy being that type of club is a little bit outrageous, don't you think?
Well, all I'm saying is that, you went down the first time and, of course, your owner said it will never happen again. And then it happened again. And now your owner's saying...
Things, though, hasn't he?
OK. But what I'm saying is the will of the fans has got to eventually come through to convince the board that you want to be taken seriously as a Premier League club. Now, please don't get me wrong, Daniel. Please don't get me wrong. But last season, you had a very successful season, but it was in the wrong league. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is just think about the joy last season of celebrating a Newcastle victory down in the big market after every home game compared to the misery of the season before. You had a great season. You were in the wrong league. I mean, it's difficult to equate the two, isn't it?
It is very hard to equate the two. I totally get where you're coming from. But you can ask any Newcastle fan, including myself, I would rather finish in the bottom half, staying in the Premier League, than winning the Championship again. Because to get into the Championship, despite winning it, we still had to be relegated. And the pain, I mean, it was horrid. It was absolutely horrible, guys. I can't explain to you, being an avid fan. I mean, I'm 30 years old, so I got into Newcastle, 94, 95, 96 as a young lad. So I saw those days as a kid, getting the passion there. And to see what's happening now, granted, you can blame Ashley if you want. In fairness, he made the right decision in January, I think, not investing. It would have been a waste of money, wouldn't it? We got where we wanted to be. So, I just wanted to say that I really, really, for you guys to suggest that any if you get a Newcastle fan on today that says, I don't mind being an up-and-down yo-yo club, then they're not a Newcastle fan. Simple as.
Right.
Now,
okay.
what about this tweet that I've got here as well, Brent? Sorry, from a guy called Brent, who says, Rafa said after a meeting with Ashley that he can have every penny that Newcastle will get for promotion to the Premier League. And what's he going to do with that, though? Because we were saying earlier, he's going to have to compete for players with, what you might call other mid-table teams. He's got no chance of getting the players probably that, say, the Cities and the Uniteds are going after, and the Liverpools maybe. But, is there any chance of actually getting some top players?
Well, for me, do we want them? I mean, how many times do top players come to England? I mean, you were talking about Nolito earlier going to Man City.
Yeah.
What's he bloody done? Nothing.
Well, apart from
I'd rather go for that. I'd rather go for the types of Tammy Abraham who are going to come in potentially and really have got something to prove. Granted, he's going to stick a load of value on his head and then possibly move on, but at least we're going to get what we need to be that stable. Mid-table club and potentially push on to something greater. Next season, people are saying, I heard some of you guys talking about Newcastle winning the league next season. Utterly ridiculous. There's no way that's going to happen at all. If we finish 11th, 12th, good season, let's push on to maybe what Southampton are doing. I mean, I heard a lot of Southampton fans moaning as well that they're finishing 8th and there's nothing going. If I was finishing 8th with Newcastle every year, selling players, getting players, selling, I would be very, very happy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great call, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Jack, who's an Everton fan. He wants to talk a little bit about Lukaku and the tapping up scenario. Jack, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, young man. How are you?
Very well. What do you want to say, Jack?
Right. What happened between Southampton and Liverpool, that's a private grief between the two clubs. We've got two players who refused to sign contracts. One is Barkley, and much to his credit, he's kept himself very, very quiet. But Lukaku has been all over social media, he's been all over the radios, he's been on the press. He knows where he's going to be playing next season. Now, isn't this a case of a player tapping up a club?
Well, I think it all comes through agents.
Certainly the player's agent tapping up.
Yeah, it's all through agents again, isn't it, Jack? But you're absolutely right. I mean, the minute he said, "Yeah, I know where I'm going," well, could you share that, please, with the Everton fans who've been paying you wages for the last 3 years?
He's not been put on the transfer list. Now, if he wants to leave, ask for a transfer. Now, he won't do that because he'll lose his job.
Of course he will. I mean, his agent will have, manipulated it and I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. That's what agents do. And now we are all aware of the fact he doesn't want to play for Everton anymore. So my view is, well, thanks very much. Now push off.
I still think it's all a game. He might be staying.
Well, what do you think about that, Jack?
Yeah, but we're getting a bit carried away with Lukaku. How many goals has he scored against the so-called top 6?
Yeah, well, he doesn't score against the top 4, does he?
Well, top 4. So the question is, why not? If he's the, I'm concerned. If he goes, he goes. I've been a blue nose all my life.
Yes.
I'm 80 in a couple of weeks.
80. My God, you're sounding well for 80. Well done.
It's the brandy.
Yeah, good man. Keep drinking.
And he's been shouting his mouth off about where he's going. So ask for a transfer. Everyone have said they don't want to sell him. They put a price on the player, but they've never said he's up for transfer.
Yeah.
And Barkley, to his credit, has kept his ammunition. He's not said a word.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't, and nobody knows whether he's going to still be there as well in the fullness of time.
True.
But a great call, Jack. Thank you very much indeed. 0871722.
You sound great for 80, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 80 is the new 70.
Yeah, 80 is the new 70. Yeah, I suppose.
80 is not old anymore.
Yeah, no.
I mean, you may not reach that particular age, but most of us will.
My heart won't last that long.
No,
only 1/3 of it works.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually 49%. It's gone up. You know that. I've got documentary evidence from Dr. Banner who says that. Gary O says this: Huddersfield will be the surprise team. Young, forward-thinking manager, backed by the best chairman in all the leagues.
No, I'm awfully sorry to have to say Huddersfield are coming straight back down. I'm sorry to have to say that.
Well, I don't think you're necessarily the right man to predict these things.
OK, Huddersfield are... The closest thing to Huddersfield over recent years is Burnley, right? Although Burnley are a bigger club than Huddersfield.
Burnley have stayed up.
They've stayed up, that's what I'm saying. But Huddersfield aren't as big as Burnley, and I don't think they can.
All right.
I think the intentions are great. I think the chairman's great. I think the manager's great. Yeah. But it'll all be too much in the Premier League next season.
Is that right? Well, you put your money on Huddersfield to stay up now because some people realise that the jinx will work well. Here's one from somebody called Poppies who says, the massive jinx has now been placed on Newcastle. They may as well look forward to the Championship again next year.
You see, I don't know why people say these sort of things.
Well, because
I just don't know why people say these sort of things.
Because they know that your predictions often work in reverse.
It's just nonsensical. Completely nonsensical.
Coming up, we're going to talk about rock stars. David Hepworth has just written a new book called Uncommon People, The Rise and Fall of the Rock Star. He's going to be here next.
Gene lives on his back. Gene loves chimney stacks.
This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics. We've got loads coming up, of course. Ask Porky a little bit later on if you need a problem solved. He's your man. All you got to do is tweet us at the two mics or send us a message on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Also, the two mics. Right now, though, we're joined by David Hepworth, who's the author of Uncommon People, The Rise and Fall of the Rock Star. David, welcome to talkSPORT. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
No, well, listen, I mean, the rock star world is something that we're both sort of old enough to remember in terms of actually going to see bands and meeting up with some of the rather more eccentric and crazy people that used to inhabit the music business. It's become very bland, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what I kind of started off. I just wanted to write something about rock stars as a tribe, these kind of larger-than-life characters that we all had kind of adopted as fantasy friends when we were about 13 or 14 years old, and we've followed them through our lives. And then it struck me when I started doing it, there aren't any anymore.
No, too much good living. In fact, in my view, the last real rock star is Liam Gallagher. And he's retired now, but he was the last one who was causing mayhem all over the place.
Well, yeah, in my story kind of starts in 1955 with Little Richard, and it ends in 1994 with Kurt Cobain, who I think was kind of the last person who sort of felt the responsibility of having to behave like a rock star. You could argue the Gallaghers as well, but they never meant quite so much outside the UK as they meant within the UK.
That's true.
But it's kind of gone away. And it came home to me the other day when I saw, you must be familiar with that famous picture of when Elvis Presley turned up at the White House.
Yes, to be a special FBI officer.
Conned his way into Nixon's presence. And there he is, photographed in the Oval Office, rock star and president. And you thought to yourself, if that happened again today, the kind of biggest rock star, I don't know, Justin Bieber or something like that, who would be the unpredictable one?
Yeah.
The world has changed completely.
But is it down, do you think, to money? Because, I mean, looking through, there's some great pictures in this book, right? And, I mean, I was at Nebworth for that last Led Zeppelin show, and there's a great picture of Peter Grant with Robert Plant. And, I mean, whenever I see those people in any situation, you just think what I would have given to just have been there, to meet them.
That's right.
To see how they actually really lived. Was it really as mad and as crazy as that? And when you see all that, you wonder how much, now they made so much money, did that kind of take away the rebellious nature of what they were?
I suppose it might be part of it. I think also the kind of behaviour becomes a bit of a performance in itself. I tell you, one of the things that strikes me is that it would be impossible nowadays, in the age of social media, to have a rock star like you had a rock star back in the early 70s or 80s. Because you couldn't behave the way that Led Zeppelin and David Bowie behaved on tour in 1971. You spend all your time apologising nowadays.
You certainly would.
Because people would know what you were doing.
and talking about Led Zeppelin or the Eagles, who was your favourite rebellious rock star or rock group? I mean, who were the most decadent? I mean, Led Zeppelin, we were working in America with a mate of ours who used to fly around with Led Zeppelin, photographing them, and he couldn't photograph a lot of the stuff they were doing. So who was your favourite decadent band or individual?
Oh, good grief, decadent. I don't know. I think David Bowie had his period, in the 70s when he tried pretty much everything, and as somebody famously said about Keith Richards, a man who didn't so much burn the candle at both ends as apply a blowtorch to the middle.
Right, yeah.
And I think David Bowie probably did his share
Bowie's
of that.
admitted, I mean, certainly the Man Who Fell to Earth period, where he was doing so much cocaine, he didn't really remember what he was doing. He had doesn't remember making the film, doesn't remember how he managed to look so much like an alien. But the answer is because he actually was so spaced out that he couldn't act.
The cover of this book is actually a picture of David Bowie arriving at the side of Hammersmith Odeon in 1973, getting out of his limo, surrounded by enthralled 15-year-olds who'd all bunked off school for the day.
Yes.
And that was his last kind of Ziggy Stardust show. And then he went afterwards to a party, star-studded party at the Café Royal.
Right.
Barbara Streisand, absolutely, everybody was there. He couldn't remember a thing about it afterwards. And about 3 days later, he decided he didn't want to retire after all. He just kind of recovered.
I don't think I will. So,
and let me just ask, there's a reference to somebody in that caption on that picture, isn't there?
This guy called Malcolm Green. He lives in. He bunked off school in North London. To be down there. And in those days, you could go and buy a ticket off a tout on the day and get into a show like that. Probably for about £1.50.
I did it many times.
You did it many times. So you must be terribly disappointed then, David, at the advent of people like Take That because Take That are so respectable. They're now respectable to middle-aged people. I mean,
the big stories are about how they avoid paying tax.
Yeah, or allegedly, allegedly avoid paying. But I mean, you must. Every new rock star that comes up, you must be so disappointed that we're never going to have a guy who's going to pick up a television and throw it out of a hotel bedroom again.
It's interesting. I refer to this in the book, actually. In 1972, the Rolling even in 1972, the Rolling Stones on that gigantic tour of America, where they were tracked all the way around by a documentary crew who wanted them to behave in a way that was more visual. Yes. They had to stage an orgy on a plane because there wasn't one normally. They actually got them to throw a television set out of a hotel window. And let me tell you, you can find that clip on YouTube. And it's a lot harder to throw a television set out of a hotel window than you might think.
I'm sure if you haven't unplugged it.
But it's like a lot of these things, isn't it?
Old tellies are big difficult things.
They're very heavy. And also the glass was a bit harder than... I mean, it's like a lot of these stories. Many of them are very popular. It's like driving Rolls Royces into swimming pools. It happens once, and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, but they were always doing that."
Everybody wants to believe that stuff. Keith Richards has his blood changed every year. All that stuff. Yeah. And Keith Richards is not stupid enough to deny it, because he knows that his longevity is connected with people telling those stories.
We spent some time with Rod Stewart recently, who's still very much the old sort of rocker, but very much kind of now the family man.
Oh,
and he says, one of the abiding stories about me that people still write is that I was a grave digger. And he said, I was never a grave digger, but everybody keeps writing it, so I don't really keep objecting to it.
Once it goes into the cuts,
Exactly.
Rod Stewart, interestingly, said to a friend of mine who interviewed him not long ago, he said, how long do you think you'll keep on singing Maggie May? That's this song they wrote in 1971. He said, as long as I've got the Barnet. And I think it's a really good point.
That's right. And he did also say to us, when he gives concerts now, he's not interested in introducing people to new songs. He gives them what they came for, and that was the repertoire.
Play some old
of his great songs, which are still legendary. So now we're losing our rock stars. Do you sort of go rigid every time you hear another David Bowie, i.e., oh no, we've lost David? We've lost so many of them. We lose some of them very young, like Amy Winehouse, but those who get up to a decent age...
Well, quite a lot of them have lasted far longer.
Oh, goodness.
Let's not forget, when I started this book... Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis and Fats Domino were all still alive. But since then, we've lost Chuck Berry. Now, God bless them, but if there were any justice, they would have fallen off the twig long ago.
Well, I mean, one of the things that you see now... One of the things that you see now is a meme that sort of goes out on social media, a picture of Keith Richards.
That's right,
And it's when somebody else famous has died, and it's Keith's still here.
Still here.
That's
my theory about Keith is he'll wait until Mick goes, and then a week later he'll go, I win.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we mustn't...
But that was kind of what I was saying about the fact that once people become very wealthy, they don't want to smash things up so much, because, it's a bit like when you begin to make a bit of money as a kid, you suddenly go, well, actually, I don't want to smash this up anymore because I bought it. I now own something and I don't really want to be a rebel anymore.
But the interesting thing is how much we want them to behave like that.
Of
course, because we want them to behave in a way that we don't feel we got permission to behave ourselves.
That's right.
And it's really interesting if you go on Google and just Google like a rock star, you find you can do anything like a rock star nowadays. You can be a politician like a rock star. You can be a footballer like a rock star. You can learn to sew like a rock star. Because it's just something that appeals to us.
That's right.
That idea of doing something independently.
Exactly. Bob Marley must have been a very interesting study.
Bob Marley, I wrote about going to see Bob Marley in the Lyceum in 1970 and 1975, which I still insist is the best show I ever saw in my life.
Really?
And so he was, in many senses, the greatest rock star I ever saw in my life.
Yeah.
He was hugely charismatic. He did it all himself.
Yeah.
He was completely in charge. He was utterly at the top of his game.
And he had a great view on life in terms of relationships with the opposite sex, didn't he?
Well, he felt he had a license to kind of...
He was a love god, wasn't he?
Spread his favours around pretty widely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating stuff.
He was extraordinary, as you can still hear on the live album to this day.
Brilliant.
Right.
Well, it's a lovely-looking book.
It certainly is.
I'm going to take it home and start reading it immediately this afternoon. It's called Uncommon People, The Rise and Fall of the Rock Stars. David Hepworth, available from all good online bookstores and regular bookstores, I presume.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
don't buy a copy and throw it out the window.
That's right. And thank you very much for coming to join us today, David, to lighten up our lives with these wonderful tales.
Thank you very much indeed. This is talkSPORT. This is the Two Mics on talkSPORT with Wicks. Right now there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care. Ask Porky's coming up a little bit later on. By the way, we haven't sorted out the Porky quiz yet, have we?
Yes, it's on England-Scotland.
What do you mean, yes, it's on England-Scotland?
Yes.
Since when?
Since we decided that yesterday. It's on Scotland-England, actually, but it's England-Scotland fixture, the oldest fixture in the...
I thought we were going to decide it on the air today.
No, we have decided it, and we've announced it to the audience. It's already up and running.
We haven't announced it.
My research has started on it, OK?
We haven't announced it because we haven't mentioned it.
Well,
This was why I was introducing it to the people who are listening, so they will know what the quiz will be on tomorrow.
Right, the quiz and this show tomorrow will be on the historic England-Scotland fixture, the oldest in the international calendar, OK?
Well,
because it's taking place...
I better tell the independent quizmasters who haven't yet been informed.
It's taking place on Saturday, as you may or may not know.
I know it's taking place on Saturday because we were talking to Henry Winter earlier, who was exposing your foul lies when you were at the FA.
How dare you?
And telling us all about how the Scottish police are not particularly happy about the 5 o'clock timing of the kickoff.
Well, I don't blame them.
Because it's going to leave them an awful lot of afternoon work to do.
I don't blame them.
You'd have to say.
I don't blame them. Now, listen, I'll tell you what I want to talk to you about. I have admiration for our forefathers who have, made most of the best inventions in the world to make our lives easier, like, the internal combustion engine and the aeroplane, all that kind of stuff. So how come when we go to one of these new authoritative surveys to ask what is the greatest invention of all time, somebody comes up with tea bags?
Tea bags?
Right, and tea bags ahead of the wheel, the fridge, the sewerage system, the plough, penicillin, the internet, armour...
Does it depend who you ask?
Hang on, armour, light bulbs and the clock. How can tea bags even be anywhere in the reckoning?
Well, who have they asked?
Cares about tea bags?
The first question I would ask you is who's done the survey. Is it related to a tea company? And would you expect that then would be the result?
No. The list was released by English Heritage, a completely independent body. I think I'm a member of it, actually.
You think you're a member of English Heritage?
I think I am, yeah.
How much do you pay a year for that?
I don't know, but I think it's a regular contribution.
Why are you a member of that?
Because I think I decided to join up years ago to preserve the heritage of my country.
Right, OK.
Right, so it's English Heritage, which surveyed 2,000 people and asked them to name the most innovative products in human history. But I just don't get it.
Well, that's not the same as the best invention, is it?
Well, Matt Thompson, who is the head collections curator at English Heritage, says... History has been built on ingenious inventions, big and small, and it's fascinating today to hear what people find ingenious. The tea bag was invented by accident, but has stood the test of time.
It was only the other day you were describing the invention of the tea bag, weren't you?
Well,
because you were saying it was a kind of accidental discovery.
Well, funnily enough, that's endorsed here. It says the first tea bags were created in 1908 when New York tea merchant Thomas Sullivan sent samples to his customers in small silken bags.
That's right.
It was only after they told him that the gaze was too fine that Sullivan realised they'd placed the bags in their pots rather than empty out the tea first. He then began refining the bags.
Do you mean the gauze?
I've just said that.
You said the gaze.
Shut up and let me move on.
Well, I'm trying to, but you keep mispronouncing the words.
By the 1920s, the tea bag was being commercially produced in the US with the silk replaced by paper and coming complete with a length of string and tab. Little has changed since, apart from some now being round or pyramid-shaped.
Well, the pyramid-shaped ones a lot of people like. I'm not a big fan of the pyramid-shaped ones, to be honest. But I think the point is that people have been asked what's their kind of, favourite invention rather than, what the best invention of all time.
Yeah.
So that's probably why people are saying tea bags, because, if you had to make a pot of tea every time you wanted a cup, that would be a pain in the neck, wouldn't it?
Well, I remember that in the days when I was an infant. My mother had a huge silver... What's your problem?
I can just imagine, because every time you conjure up this image of you as an infant, it just makes me laugh, because I just imagine this little kid with red hair and a red beard running about, sort of aged about 4.
You make me sound like a leprechaun. I didn't have a beard when I was an infant, you idiot. Now, my mum had this big silver pot.
Right.
A huge silver pot. Yeah. And we had it for years, because I remember the lid got wonky, and it started letting the heat out and all that kind of stuff.
Was it actually a silver pot? Was it pewter or something? Or?
It wasn't made of silver, put it that way. So it's made of pewter or something, or stainless steel.
Because you could get poisoned by some of those pots,
Well, I don't know about that.
That could explain a lot.
But anyway, the point is, and by the way, we were so fastidious in those days. When the lid went a bit wonky, my dad, had a mate who would fix the lid rather than get a new pot.
Rather than get a new pot,
That's right,
Yeah, but this is the thing that people nowadays don't can't get.
Yes.
I mean, I have these conversations with my kids all the time because they're so now used to living in this sort of throwaway society.
That's right, yeah.
You know, they get a new phone every couple of years. You know, you keep things for years.
We did, yeah. But anyway, so and my mum used to, she used to spoon the tea in from the tea caddy.
That's right.
And then pour the boiling water in. It had to be boiling at the time.
Yeah.
And then she had this huge spoon she'd stir it round with, right? And
you're not supposed to stir it.
Oh, yes, she did all the time.
No,
stir
that's
it, right?
not a good
and
idea.
Then close the lid and then put the tea cosy on it, which covered everything except the spout.
The tea cosy, yes.
And,
usually knitted, right?
Yeah, usually knitted. And then the expression was always, there's a cup in the pot, there's tea in the pot, there's a brew in the pot or something like that. Whereas I haven't made a cup of tea from a teapot for maybe 3...
Well, I mean, I still occasionally do.
3 generations.
3 generations?
3 decades, I mean, yeah. That's right.
I was going to say, that's quite a long time.
Do you?
Yeah,
make
I do.
a pot of tea?
Well, yeah, because if there's 4 of you having tea in the house, then we'll have occasionally make a pot.
Yeah.
But have you ever been taught the trick of making a pot of tea so that the tea leaves don't come out into the cup without using a strainer?
No, I haven't.
Well, you just tap the side of the pot with the spoon.
And what happens?
All the tea leaves go to the bottom.
Well, it must be caught up then in the flow of the liquid through the spout into the cup.
No, because they sink to the bottom.
Yeah.
Right, you tap it about 4 times, quite gently, with a silver spoon. And then when you pour the tea out, the leaves don't come out.
I hate getting tea in my mouth now. I mean, I used to get it all the time.
Have you got a strainer?
Well, I don't use tea from a pot anyway, so it doesn't matter. I just use. But look, I do think it's ridiculous to put that way ahead of things like penicillin. Penicillin has saved millions of people's lives.
Yeah, but I think they must have asked the question a different way. Because it's not. I mean, because if somebody came up to you in the street and said,
it says the most important invention. That was the question.
The most important.
What has been the most important invention? Ridiculous. How can you put that above a clock?
Well, people must have been, with tongue firmly placed in the cheek.
Well, maybe.
Stephen says this, by the way. Tell that numpty Mike Parry, Liam Gallagher hasn't retired. He's just finished a new album. And then he puts, and you'll recognise this, as you were.
Yeah, I know he hasn't retired. What I'm saying is that he's retired from Oasis, and in Oasis...
no, Oasis have broken up.
Oasis have broken up, of course, and in Oasis he did have a bit of a bad boy image, which was perfectly acceptable to me, but, he doesn't seem to have a bad boy image these days.
I've spotted a flaw in your story, right? I've got the story here in front of me now. The top 10 in history of inventions have been revealed, right?
Yes.
The tea bag, as you say, the wheel, the fridge, sewers, the plough, penicillin, the internet, armour, light bulbs, the clock. Yeah, but the one salient point that you've forgotten to mention, right, is that underneath it says items are in no particular order.
Yes.
So the tea bag is not, in fact, the number 1.
It is. It's there.
It's in the top 10.
Yes, that's right.
As are all the others.
Yes, that's right.
They're in no particular order.
Ask the British to name the most important inventions of all time. You lie them agreeing with I'm getting to it. The tea bag.
Yeah.
See? So I'm sorry. No.
Here it is here. History's top 10. Items are in no particular order.
I don't know exactly. I don't know what you're talking about there. Items are in no particular order, but they've been placed in order by English heritage.
No, they haven't been placed in order.
Yes, they have.
It says... history has been built on ingenious inventions, big and small, and it's fascinating to hear what people find ingenious.
Okay. Excuse me, just to clarify exactly where we are here, I wouldn't even put a tea bag in the top 10 most important things ever invented. Do you see what I mean?
Well, what would you replace it with?
What would I replace it with?
Yeah.
Out of that list there?
No, because they're already in the top 10.
Yeah, I know. So I'd take out tea bags and I'd put the internal combustion engine in there.
The internal combustion engine?
Yeah, which has helped people. Or electricity.
What about the jet engine?
The jet engine, electricity, internal combustion engine.
What about scissors?
I
would say scissors.
Possibly scissors. What about binoculars? Because you could never have gone to sea or won a war without binoculars.
That's rubbish.
Or the telescope.
They didn't have binoculars in Lord Nelson's day, did they?
Yeah, they had telescopes.
That's a telescope.
That's right,
That's not a binoculars.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And, by the way, if...
Well, see, check it out. Next time you go down to Ascot,
that's right.
or perhaps the Derby, instead of taking out some binoculars to check the winning post, why don't you take a telescope?
Yeah, why not?
And tell everyone it's the same thing.
Why not? Well, it is the same thing.
Watch them cart you off to the madhouse.
No, not at all. And I can think of 100 other things. I mean, what about the aeroplane?
What about the aeroplane?
That's not in the list as well. So I think basically there's been a bit of a collective madness over this one.
I know. I don't know quite how it happened. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
Here's one from Pete who says English Heritage membership £7.99 a month gives you free access to thousands of visitor attractions.
Oh right.
Perfect for a freeloading large man.
Well, if I find a freeloading large man knocking around, I'll advise him to get a subscription immediately, OK?
How about this from Steve? I believe there's a fine line between genius and being crazy.
Yeah.
And I know Mike Parry is a highly intelligent man, but he has crossed the line.
No, I do not think so.
I don't know what he means by that.
I don't know what he means by that either. Lots of...
You've seen the time, by the way.
Yeah, lots of very appreciative messages here. For instance, here we go. The best invention is the remote control mute button. It's so handy when any politician starts spouting nonsense.
Well, you don't want to be listening to that. You want to be listening to talkSPORT.
A guy called Natterjack. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Coming up in the next hour, we've got Ask Porky. This is talkSPORT. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the two Mikes right here on talkSPORT. Coming up in this hour, we're going to have Ask Porky, the one place where you can get invaluable advice, but it could be about your career, about your love life, about where to go on holiday, or just a simple dilemma of etiquette that you haven't quite worked out. You know what to do. You can tweet us at the two Mikes, or of course you can find us on Facebook as well. 08717 223344. Also coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking to Vicky Welsh, who's a female scaffolder, who's going to be telling us why there's so few female scaffolders, and she wants there to be more recruited. We'll find out what that's all about as well. You're listening to the two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. I'll tell you what else I meant to mention to you. Have you seen this story about your old mate David Moyes?
Well, funny enough, I was going to raise that as a potential Scotland manager.
Yeah, potential Scotland manager.
Yeah.
We, without giving too much away,
yes.
We were up in Scotland not that long ago.
We were.
To attend a football match between Celtic and Rangers at Hampden Park in the company of Sir Rod Stewart.
Yes.
We saw Gordon Strachan while we were there.
We did.
In the Millennium Lounge, I think it was, at the Hampden facility.
Yes.
Not too a million miles away from the bar. And he was in very good mood, wasn't he?
He was very jovial.
Yeah.
He had clearly an acceptance about him that, certainly by the end of this campaign, this campaign for qualification for the next World Cup in Russia, which it doesn't look like Scotland are going to be able to,
unfortunately not,
to get through to.
No.
He certainly had an acceptance that was going to be it then, and actually even said to us, because we said, look, if we get up here for the Scotland-England game, it'll, which we thought we might, but unfortunately time has precluded that, but we might give you a wave. He said, no, I might be waving at you.
Yeah.
He suggested
he said I might be up here.
Yeah, that's right,
by the second half, he might have already been either fired or might have quit. So, and he also said he might be coming back down the road, which of course is the Scottish vernacular for coming back down to England.
That's right.
To get himself another managerial position.
Yeah, maybe.
But David Moyes, I mean, is that where he wants to go next? Really, to be the Scotland manager?
I probably read the same account that you did of the prospects of David Moyes becoming the England manager, and it was quite a little bit unkind, really. It said since a successful spell at Everton, he's had 3 successive unsuccessful spells.
Well, that's true, though, isn't it?
And it is true, I'm afraid. Yeah, that is just pure facts of the situation. And that he would welcome a balancing job to try and restore his reputation. But the phrase they used was, the environment of being Scotland team manager seems to suit the sort of conditions David Moyes likes to work in, and that is that he gets more out of a club or a football association than is expected because of the resources that particular body has.
Well, you say that, but then it didn't really work in Sunderland, did it? And it didn't really work necessarily.
It worked in Everton for a long time.
Yeah, but it worked in a way, funnily enough, that people say, he was seen as a safe pair of hands and steadied the ship and all that. But actually, when people... I think I saw a piece where it was kind of analysing his time there. Yeah. And in 11 years, I mean, he didn't win anything. Well, he kept them steady and all of that.
Very steady, yeah.
But, there wasn't any great sort of fire in the belly, was there?
I think to put it into perspective, I mean, all Premier League clubs now have lots of money since the new TV deal, and that's increased like this year for the first time. So we're all on a much more level playing field. But when the Premier League first started, the money returns were not as high.
Sure.
And clubs still relied on A, the wealth of their owners, B, the size of their crowds, and D, how many times they got onto television in a season, Right. And Everton were way down the bottom of the queue there because we didn't have wealthy owners compared to other clubs. We were restricted.
Good ticket sales, though.
Very good ticket sales, but restricted by the size of the ground compared to, people like Old Trafford and all that kind of stuff. And we weren't a terribly popular club in terms of TV, so we did extremely well. That's the context in which it's in. And what they're saying is that David does have a track record of bringing the best out of teams and overperforming. And they think that he has a very good mindset to be able to do that in Scotland.
Interesting stuff. Now, how about this from Andy, who says the best invention is a sandwich toaster bag. Always a sandwich
I don't know
allows
what that is.
a sandwich to be toasted inside the toaster. Genius. I don't know what that is either.
Well, hang on. That's where you get a toastie from, inside a toaster, so I'm not sure.
No, I mean, a toaster is only for putting in bits of bread.
Slices of bread, yeah.
And then toasting them, right?
Yes.
What he's saying is this toaster bag involves putting the sandwich that you've just made inside a bag, then into the toaster, and where it's then toasted.
Oh, no, it will come in a bag, won't it? It'll come in a sealed bag, obviously, and you stick it into your toaster. And you yes, it will, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I've had those on the continent, like ham and cheese and that kind of stuff.
No, he's saying the sandwich toaster bag, which must mean that you can put a sandwich in the bag.
Yeah, I see, yeah.
It would have to be a very thin sandwich, surely.
Yeah, it would be, because a double...
if you made a proper sandwich...
with two slices of bread, where would you get? You wouldn't get it in, would you? No. So I think that is another no-go, if you see what I mean.
Are you feeling all right?
Yes, I'm feeling
Would you like some more Red Bull?
No.
You know we've got a long way to go today.
Now listen,
I hope you're going to get some sleep, are you?
Yeah, we get some sleep. Don't worry. Now listen,
not worried.
The property market obviously interests me because I have a small investment in it.
Yeah, you have a very large investment in it, actually.
No, that's not true.
Would it surprise you to know that on what was it, Tuesday afternoon?
Yes,
I recorded you. Yeah. About making a statement about the amount of property that you own.
No, that would be a duplicitous and sneaky trick.
I recorded you with your knowledge.
What?
I recorded you with your knowledge.
I have no knowledge of this. Now,
you may have no recollection of it. It's not the same thing.
No, don't be silly. Now, let me
carry on like that, and I'll play it out.
Well, that would be a very foolish thing to do.
Would it? Okay.
Because I may have been trying to deceive you. You see?
What, you mean you might have been telling me some untruths?
Well, I may have been trying to make sure that you don't know what it's all about.
I see.
Now, what I'm saying is that we have come across I'm very worried about the property market because of the amount of stamp duty and everything people have to pay, so it does worry me a bit. But anyway, look, because my journals are sent to me regularly on available property, I can't believe this one. It is called The Last Unmodernised Mews House in London.
Oh, yeah.
It is described as beautifully derelict. It's a one-bedroom home.
One bedroom? It's not very big then, is it?
No. It's near Little Venice.
That's a very nice
area.
And
it goes on the market, even in the dilapidated state it's in, and it looks like a tumble-down wreck, for £2.5 million.
Really? That is mad, isn't it?
It is described as a dilapidated tiny property in Little Venice, which is in central London. Well, Little Venice
It's Maida Vale, isn't it?
Maida Vale. Could you say
I would call it
central London?
Yeah, I would say so, because it's NW1, generally speaking, isn't it? It's between sort of Paddington and St John's Wood.
Yeah, it's there's a basin there, isn't there?
A basin?
Where all the houseboats...
well, the houseboats all sit on Regent's Park Canal.
That's right,
which is a bit of it which is there.
But that is why it's known as Little Venice.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It has only 1,484 square feet of floor space.
Right.
I know some people whose lounges are...
I had an office in New York bigger than that.
That's right, exactly, yeah. It makes it the most expensive one-bedroom home ever advertised on a popular property website. The ground floor was a garage.
Right.
And the first floor has a living room, bedroom, kitchen and bathroom.
Right.
Okay?
So the ground floor, is that still a garage?
It still is a garage, but it can be converted. That's the point, because it's a very dilapidated house. But when I see some pictures of the interior, I mean, somebody's been living here because, for instance, let me show you that one. There's a fully made-up double bed in a room that doesn't have a ceiling.
Right.
Or has a very temporary ceiling.
Is that a glass ceiling, perhaps?
Well, I think it's glass panels.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of glass panels at the top of the building.
Okay.
And then if I look at this next one here, I think this is a back door, but if you look at it, all the floor panels have been taken up, the planks of wood, there's boxes in there. I mean, it's in a very renovative state.
Yes, but I mean, you know more about this than I do.
Yeah.
But I mean, quite often, one of the good things about buying a property is that you can actually rip out what was there before.
Yeah, you can.
And start again. And because it's already half ripped out, that might be seen as a bit of an advantage.
You'd have to be very careful buying a property like this because there might be orders on it that, would prohibit you from changing the outside of a property.
Yeah.
And therefore, any structural changes you want to make are limited.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Also, the biggest problem nowadays, if you buy into a place like a mews, is the other people in the mews, because quite often people that live in mewses are very careful about what goes on there, because it's quite a noise-free environment, right? So if you suddenly turn up with a load of building people and building works, you're going to get complaints.
Well, there was a lady in, I think it was Notting Hill, and, she was a lady of a certain age. She wanted to change something about her house. I can't quite remember what it was.
Was this not the woman who wanted to paint it in a particular colour.
Oh, no,
and they wouldn't let her do it.
No. She wanted to change something about the house, and I can't remember what it was, and they wouldn't let her, like, build an extension on the back or something like that.
Yeah.
So in retaliation for being turned down by the planning committee because of the objections of her neighbours, she did exactly what you said. She painted the front of the house broad red and white stripes.
That's right,
So it looked like something from a little Danish port, with a little fishing boats bobbing around and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was completely out of sync with the rest of the area. And then they went even more mad, the neighbours. But when they went back to the planning committee, they said, well, you don't need planning permission to do that.
No, you can paint any colour you like.
So her revenge was ultimate.
Absolutely.
She absolutely wrecked the neighbourhood.
Yeah, terrible stuff. We've got more to come, of course. We've got Ask Porky coming up. But next, we're going to be talking to a female scaffolder about why there are not more female scaffolders. This is talkSPORT. Right, now then, you're with the two mics, of course. We're on talkSPORT, and this is Wix. Right, now, there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care. We've got lots more coming up. Ask Porky. You've still got a chance to get a question in under the wire if you need something sold, if you need some kind of problem sorting out. Porky is your man. You can tweet us at the two mics, or of course find us on a Facebook page as well, which is the two mics. Now, there's many things on Facebook, and there's a Facebook page as well for female scaffolders.
That's right.
Would you believe? Because apparently there's very, very few female scaffolders out there.
Well, shall I tell you the figures?
Tell me.
There are 49,163 men registered in the industry of scaffolding.
Right.
There are 6 women.
Six
UK women
That's
working
a shocking
scaffolders.
statistic.
Unbelievable.
Now, luckily, we've got one of the people who is a female scaffolder right here on the show. Her name is Vicky Welsh. Vicky, very good afternoon to you. Thanks for coming on.
Hello, you all right?
Yeah,
very well indeed,
very well
you.
Indeed. Now, why is it we live in a world of, we're in 2017, that there are no women scaffolders practically? 6 out of how many thousand?
6 out of 50,000.
50,000, altogether. There's just not enough people selling it, I suppose. Everywhere you look, they're all men, and it just puts women off, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now you formed the society, Females in Scaffolding, Vicky, because you want more women to join the profession. How's the response gone?
Well, it's went really well so far. I mean, especially since we've done the article in The Sun, I've had loads of messages on the page.
Right.
I've already got a young girl in the North East area who's looking to start an apprenticeship next week.
Right.
And then I've also had a message off another girl who's saying she's going to go and work with a cousin's for a cousin's firm. So I've gave her a little bit of advice. So it's kind of taken off. It's only been there since March.
Right.
And that's two people already. That's at least shown some interest. So that's 2.
Well, hang on. 2 on 6 is already 33 and a third percent. I'd say that's a pretty good result.
I totally agree. Now, if you don't mind me saying, Vicky, obviously you're a very lovely lady. And what at 19, why did you decide to get into scaffolding? And do you accept that a lot of young ladies at that age will have thought
ladies?
Mm-hmm, will
you
have
mean
thought
women?
Yeah, that's right. It will have thought it wasn't a particularly glamorous occupation for females.
Yeah, well, it just sort of happened by chance, to be honest. I'd kind of tried out a few different jobs, and nothing interested us. The opportunity came up when I was looking for work. Someone just suggested it. Why don't you come in for a little trial? And I just thought, why not? You've got to give it a shot. So I went in, and it wasn't glamorous. It is, but that's kind of what I loved about it. And it was just so hands-on, and I got shown how to put it up, and just got given, the tools, right, to have a little shot, and I absolutely loved it. I just wanted to go back for more and find out more, and then, as it progressed, you learn the technical side of things as well. Obviously, it was hard work at first, but each week it got easier, just the same as, if you go to the gym and, your fitness gets better, you can lift things a little bit heavier, and it was just so different, and I think that's what I loved about it. And the people that you work with, all construction workers, really, they're just such a good laugh. It really gets you through the day. When you're working hands-on, the days tend to fly by as well. Like, the hours fly by. You're not sort of sitting waiting around watching time, and I just really enjoyed it. Straight away.
And also, I mean, Vicky, the thing is as well, I mean, Mr. Parry here seems to think that women should work in glamorous jobs. I mean, there's no reason why you have to work in a glamorous job. But, I mean, when you said there's an awful lot of men in the business and it puts you off a bit, do you think that does put a lot of women off? Because there's an awful lot of businesses where there are still, many more men than there are women. And a lot of women get put off perhaps by that as well.
Yeah, it's maybe not just the fact that it's all men. I think it's obviously the reputation with scaffolding, it being so heavy and being a man's job. But there are different systems out there now, different types of scaffold that aren't as heavy and are a bit more female friendly. So it's just kind of getting that noticed out there as well. I mean, you know, it's not as bad as people think, and I just want to kind of change the reputation of it, and I think that'll be a bit more inviting for women. And like I say, it was just by chance that I took it, and there's probably so many girls out there who are looking for work or they're about to leave school, they don't really know what they want to do, and it's not, like you say, it's never been seen as an option for them. It's just not something they would have thought of, and it could just save, it could really change people's lives and get them into a career.
OK, now you talk about the camaraderie in this profession, Vicky, and obviously it's an outdoor job and that sort of stuff. So are you, and you obviously come from the North East, so you're a girl who knows a bit about partying and all that,
Are you a Newcastle fan, Vicky?
Yes.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
I don't
good.
know a lot about football, but I do support Newcastle, yeah.
That's very good. So when you've finished doing a bit of scaffolding each day out there in the sunshine and all that's thirsty work, do you get down to the boozer with with your male colleagues?
Well, usually on a Friday afternoon, because most scaffolding companies close a little bit early on a Friday. You'd go straight to the pub.
Right,
and obviously you go on what we call a black one. So you'd end up out all night, basically. You'd go for one pint and you wouldn't be going home till the early hours.
That sounds like a perfect job for you, Porky. Porky does it every day.
No, come on, now, don't be ridiculous. And do you find that the camaraderie with, your male scaffolders is very good?
What do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Do you mean like getting on with everyone?
Well, no, what I mean is, they accept you as one of the gang.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. They don't hold back.
No, that's
right. When you learn about...
You've got to be able to take it, but you've got to be able to give it as much as you can.
Exactly,
take
yeah.
It, so.
When they first teach you about scaffolding, do they teach you how to be incredibly noisy first thing in the morning? Because, whenever, I'm sort of trying to have a bit of a lie-in, there's always somebody putting up some scaffolding somewhere, and they seem to delight in making as much noise as possible, getting it off the truck, then throwing it to their mate, then shoving it up to the next level, and then, throwing it all around and making a racket.
Yeah, unfortunately, we normally start about 7:30 in the morning as well. There's not a lot we can do about that. I think we need to get in touch with the employers and get later starts, I think.
That's right. Well, I tell you what, Vicky, I very much admire you for, breaking down this bastion of male stronghold and getting into scaffolding. The one thing I do know about scaffolding, I don't know much, is that you will obviously be using a lot of planks. And I work with a plank, actually. The guy sitting next to me is a plank. Yeah. So if you ever run short of a plank or two, and particularly a big plank, just give me a call, will you? And I've got one here for you.
I will do.
Yeah. He doesn't know much about scaffolding because he applied to be a surveyor at one point and he failed the course, I'm afraid, and that's why he doesn't know actually anything about building either.
Utter nonsense.
It's true.
Utter nonsense.
So, Vicky, what are you working on at the moment?
Be a labourer if he wants.
A labourer, that's right.
Yeah, he can be a labourer, yeah. No, he's too weak. Only 1/3 of his heart works, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's right.
What projects are you on at the moment? Are you on anything big?
No, not at the moment. I know that girl from the North East, Claudia, she's actually on a really big one at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
They're building a new bridge in Sunderland.
Oh, yeah.
And she's actually working on that for ISL. But so if you go on ISL, there's pictures of it. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I think another girl, Farron from London, she might be going to work on Big Ben.
On Big Ben?
Yeah, because I think they're cleaning it, aren't they?
That'll be what to tell the grandkids.
Yeah. That bridge in Sunderland will be across the way, so all the Sunderland players who've just been relegated can get out.
Very harsh, that. Listen, Vicky, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thanks,
enjoy
Vicky.
The rest of the afternoon.
Best of luck.
And probably on Friday. She's going. Did you say you're going on a black one?
They're going on a black one at 4 o'clock on Friday.
You knock off a bit earlier than that, I think. That's 3 o'clock and you don't get home till the next morning.
That's right, yeah.
Absolutely shocking. No wonder you like Newcastle so much.
Yes.
This is valuable advice on all sorts of pieces of information that you might be looking for.
Indeed.
It could be just a problem solving. It could be a bit of a personal problem. You just get it all fixed up right here. As ever, Mr. Parry, we've got loads and loads of questions covering a great deal of different areas. And some people want to know some stuff about you as well. Rob says this. How long before hanging out with rockstar royalty goes to Porky's head?
Well, I've never hung out with rockstar royalty. I was a guest of Sir Rod Stewart recently on a trip to Scotland along with MG, and it was a fantastic experience, and thanked him enormously for the privilege of being in his company. But But no, where I am is behind a microphone.
OK, Suzanne says this. My son has undergone clinical trials to fund his university degree. Is he smarter than the average bear or a half-baked?
Undergone clinical trials to what, sorry?
To fund his university degree.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Do you know how you can volunteer
you volunteer to have flu.
pig?
Yeah, have flu or something like that. No, I admire initiative from any young person who says, look, I'm not going to go with the begging bowl or my hand out. If I need money to do something to try and improve my life and further myself, I'm going to try and do it myself. And I'm delighted to hear that the young chap's got such an open mind that he's thought of another way of funding it. Good luck to him.
OK, Chris says this. As you mentioned cannabis earlier in the show, do you think it should be made legal medically or recreationally?
I don't think any drugs that do harm to the human body should be made legal. And despite what a lot of trendies say, there is ample evidence around that you ingest yourself with any strong chemical product, including cannabis, it can be harmful.
Stephen says this on the Facebook page. I have a bottle of Dom Perignon that's been in my fridge for over 10 years. Is it still drinkable?
Well, I'm not a champagne expert, to be honest. They do say that drink gets better with age. I kept a couple of bottles of red for longer than I should have done, maybe 2 years or something like that. When I opened them, they were undrinkable. So
some wine gets better with age.
Some wine does get better with age. So you'd need another expert. The only thing I would say is if somebody said to me, I'm just going to pop open this champagne and we'll have some Bucks Fizz, and told me it was a 10-year-old bottle, I wouldn't want to drink it.
Well, if it was an old vintage, you wouldn't mind, would you?
OK, I accept your superior knowledge. I personally wouldn't drink it.
My question would be, what on earth are you doing with a bottle of Dom Perignon in your fridge you're not drinking?
Exactly.
For 10 years.
I wouldn't want to drink it.
Have you gone mad?
Next question, please.
Well, why didn't he drink it earlier?
Next question, please.
All right. Darren says this. Hi, Porky. I'm starting a new job next week. What can I do to make a good impression?
Well, what you do to make a good impression is what you do when you go to any job. You turn up smart and efficiently. You turn up on time. You turn up speaking, cordially to the people who are employing you. You show due respect for those who are running the business and take all the risks. And then you apply yourself in a fashion that makes them think you're a workaholic maniac. Do all that, and you won't fail.
After the revelations that have been going around in the media about people doing naughty things, you remember this, like somebody running through a field of wheat,
yes.
Right? What is the naughtiest thing Porky did as a child?
Well, as a child, I was a good child. I never caused my parents any problems, nor my teachers or anything else.
Really?
I suppose that when, rebellion first came, I would do things like try a bit of excessive drinking when I was about 15 or 16 like that, because
that was illegal.
That sort of interested me. It was illegal, and I do not recommend it to anybody else who's 15 or 16. It was foolish, but, young people can be foolish. Look how I ended up.
Yeah, not a good idea. Stephen says this. Should I buy a Jaguar F-Type V8 or go that extra few quid more for a 2-year-old Aston Martin DB9?
Depends whether you like the thrill of a new car. Well, I love new cars because the smell of the leather inside on the seats and the very newness about it, and the fact that your wheels come with the tyres as black as as black as
the tyres,
the black hole of Calcutta. Yeah, I love the tyres to be very black and shiny because that's where they are. No, when they're first new, they're particularly black and shiny.
Do you remember those white wall tyres you used to be able to get on American cars?
Yeah, forget it. Yeah, and a 2-year-old Aston Martin DB would be super, and probably the sort of car I'd buy if I went to the Aston Martin Stakes, but I'd stick with the Jag on this occasion, thank you.
Lee says this. Hi, Porky, would you bring back national service?
No, I wouldn't actually, because although, there's a great, thought about beating the drum for disciplining young men, national service, the problem is our army's too small now to have enough people to train those who would have to be in national service. It takes an awful long time to train a soldier or anybody in the military, an airman or a naval personnel, to get them up to the standards of what we require in the English armed forces, and therefore it would take up too much time for those already there to do it. It wouldn't succeed, so I'm not in favour of it.
Lord Martin, the questions here on Twitter. My girlfriend jumps into my car and makes me turn talkSPORT off and put a music station on. Should I give her the elbow?
Well, all I can tell you is this, that we can actually... I'm sorry to have mentioned Sir Rod Stewart twice in the same piece of the show.
Sorry, are you?
But Sir Rod actually told us, and on air, live on air, and appeared in print in a newspaper, that he has the same problem. His wife Penny is not a great fan of our station. When he tries to sneak a bit of coverage, he gets a whack and told to turn it over. So you're not alone there. Just try and keep persisting.
OK. Dear Porky, what's your favourite football shirt of all time, says Pierre?
My favourite football shirt of all time is the football shirt that Alan Ball will have worn when we won the league title in 1970. I loved the simplicity of the royal blue, which seemed to be very, very royal blue in those days, and white collars and cuffs, white shorts and white socks, and in Alan Ball's case, white boots as well. I loved it for its simplicity. Of course, there wasn't any sponsorship tags in those days, and I still have an Alan Ball shirt in that fashion.
Mark says this: does Mr. Parry prefer garden peas or mushy peas with his fish and chips?
Well, that entirely depends on A, the mood, and B, the sort of meal I'm being offered. For normal fish and chips, if I was, for instance, in Wetherspoons, right, I'd always opt for the non-mushy. Sometimes they're garden, sometimes they're processed, okay?
Right.
However, if I'm eating fish fingers or sort of, fish steaks or something like that, I do prefer the mushy.
Really?
Yes.
So you don't like the mushy with the actual real fish and chips?
Not really, because it gets in the way of my chips.
I think I'm the other way round.
I think the chips get all mushed up and all that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Here's one from Sarah. She says, "Dear Porky, 5 years ago I bought a bag from a charity shop for 50p, and when I got home discovered £30 in it. I kept it and have felt slightly guilty ever since. What would you have done, and would you have returned the money to the charity shop?"
Well, if it was today, I would return the money to the charity shop, no problem at all, because, £30 is a lot to a charity shop, but it's something I can live without. Now, having said that, when I was 18 or 19 and I was a trainee reporter and I was getting paid £20 a week, if I'd have bought that bag and £30 gone, I'm not sure that my scruples would have been as straightforward and as moral. So I think it's horses for courses. I personally would have returned it. I think it should be returned, but, you've got to bring human frailties into this argument.
You can't take it now, can you?
Sorry?
You can't take it back now.
No, of course you can't, no.
Danny says this: "Porky, I'm off on my honeymoon soon. As you're a jet setter, what are your tips for getting an upgrade on a flight?" Tricky for a couple, I would have thought.
Yeah, very tricky for a couple. And the point is that I think the only way that you don't become beholden to anybody, i.e., owe them a favour, because you always owe somebody a favour if they do you a favour, is just to do it yourself. So these days, if I want to fly club class and there's not an obvious reason for receiving an upgraded opportunity...
You mean nobody's offered you one?
Yeah, exactly. I just pay for it myself.
How about this from Paul? He says, "Porky, I have an investment property with a problem tenant. I want him out, but he has 3 months left on his lease. Have you any rat-like cunning ways of seeing him off?"
Well, I'm not going to go down the road of pumping gas through his letterbox or something like that, because that wouldn't be right.
That would be
under any
entirely
circumstances.
wrong.
And of course, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Look, all you can do is, if it's such a problem that you think that it's destroying other elements of, your whole life process and all that, you're going to pay him to leave. Pay him 3 months' rent to leave. And now, I don't know what the circumstances are under which you want him to go, but otherwise, if something's happening that he's doing which is, not illegal, but very unfortunate to the neighbours and all that, you've got to work through the authorities to try and get rid. What you don't do is, don't send in a bunch of heavies to kick the door down and throw them out, because that's anarchy and it doesn't work.
That's also illegal, yeah. James, final question here. Is the money in the Premier League just an optical illusion? While the clubs are gaining more money from TV deals, it means they are just spending more money on players that would have cost a fifth of the price 10 years ago. And the clubs that can match their spending power, Real Madrid and Barcelona, have the same money and would attract the players ahead of them.
I've never understood why overseas investors come to this country and buy football clubs unless they do it the way the Glazier family did it with Manchester United, i.e., they fund the purchase of the club through loans and dividends that they then take and all that kind of stuff. Because basically, all the money that goes into football ends up in the pockets of the world's top players, without a shadow of a doubt.
Or in the pockets of their agents.
The pockets, in the pockets of the top players and a percentage to their agents. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Nobody benefits from football except the very best, the elite, and that's probably true in most professions. In the rock star business, only the guys who sell most records get all the dough.
Yeah.
Some guy playing Camberley Town Hall on a Saturday night ain't going to be, swimming pooling it anytime soon down in Stockbroker Belt, Surrey.
Absolutely right. It's all going to end in tears, no doubt. That was Ask Porky.
Yes.
We'll have more of the same time next.
Female solo artists, we've had over the years.
Uh-huh.
And
actually, we didn't, when we had our guest in earlier, David Hepworth, talking about rock stars, we didn't really talk about the female variety very much.
Well, they don't tend to be as sort of wild, do they?
What about Stevie Nicks and Janis Joplin and all those sort of people?
Yeah, sorry. But anyway, Bonnie Tyler's 66 today. I couldn't believe it. I saw her on telly about a few weeks ago, and she still looked incredibly glamorous and youngish, really. But anyway, she's 66. She's Welsh.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Do you remember we famously had that question about this song?
Yes.
On the Welsh music quiz, which we did some months ago, maybe last year.
Did we?
Yeah, we were filling in for Hawksby and Jacobs, and we did a Welsh music quiz.
Why did we do a Welsh music quiz?
I think it might have been because ahead of one of the Euros games, maybe.
Oh,
maybe
I see.
Wales.
Okay, yeah.
And you couldn't manage to remember the actual title of the song.
Yes, okay.
Which is, of course, Total Eclipse of the Heart.
That's right, Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yeah.
But the one I really liked was Lost in France.
Did you?
I was lost.
Yeah, you don't have to sing it.
France. I know. But anyway, I just thought we'd pay a little tribute to Bonnie Tyler, one of the most enduring of the female artists. Bonnie, if you're listening, very, very happy 66.
Yeah.
And you look great on it.
Thank you very much indeed. Stephen says, the tyres are black. Great advice. Cheers, Porky.
Yes,
he's the guy that was asking you whether you should go out an Aston Martin or a Jag. And a couple of other matters arising from Ask Porky. Chris says, why was pumping gas through the letterbox the first thing that came to Porky's mind?
Well, do you know what?
Suspects he's done that before.
Well, hang on. Have you ever seen The Prisoner?
The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan?
Yes.
Yeah,
Do you
many
remember
years
the
ago.
start of it?
Well, not really, no.
Once he quits at MI6 or wherever he's working for.
Before he ends up in that little village in North Wales.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Port Merion.
That's the name of it, yeah.
When he quits, and then he's got this little Lotus 7, sort of sports car.
Sort of mini moke type
That's
thing.
right, yeah. Then, very sinisterly, as he leaves MI6, he's then followed by a hearse.
Oh, yeah.
And then he gets into his apartment.
How do you have such solid recollection of these things from decades ago?
Yeah, hang on. The hearse turns up outside his front door, and an undertaker gets out and walks up the steps and has a key to open the door and goes into the lobby of his building.
Yeah.
The next thing you see is the undertaker putting a gas pipe through his letterbox, which is pumping gas in.
Right.
Patrick McGowan.
Where's the gas coming from? Is it in a canister?
In a canister or something. It doesn't actually show, it just shows the pipe, know. Patrick McGowan then starts dreamily looking up at the sky and then collapses on his own bed. The other undertaker comes in, they take him out, put him in the back of the hearse, in a box, obviously. Yeah. And he wakes up then on the island. Yes. And that's the end of his life, so to speak,
Well, then he's a prisoner.
Yeah, then he's a prisoner,
right. Thank you for explaining all that.
Yeah.
So you spend your time thinking about sort of, strange and unusual science fiction television programmes from the 1960s.
Not at all.
Okay. No. Now, listen, here's a reality show for you, or a reality story. Did you see that one about the diamond ring?
Unbelievable.
That was bought at a car boot sale in the 80s for 10 quid by some woman, right? And who wore it around the house as if it was a piece of costume jewellery. Never thought that it was worth anything.
So this is a diamond on a necklace?
No, it was a diamond. It was a diamond ring, as far as I'm aware.
A diamond ring. I see. Sorry.
And it was a cushion-shaped jewel, right? But apparently, it turns out everyone assumed it was fake, right? But it's just been sold at auction for £656,000.
It's not bad. How did she suddenly discover it was worth all that money?
The tenner diamond. I think it was in some kind of estate sale that somebody died.
Yeah.
And somebody looked at this and went, "Oh, I should get that valued." And it turns out that it's a 26.27 carat diamond, thought to have been cut in the 19th century. But nobody really knows how it ended up in a car boot sale.
So the woman who wore it all those years didn't benefit. She died and it passed into her estate.
I believe so.
And where did all this happen?
It's all happened in London at Sotheby's.
Wow.
In the last couple of days.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it?
Incredible. So if you've got something in the house that looks like a piece of costume jewellery, it might be worth getting it valued.
Yeah, but that raises people's hopes all the time. They say, look at that vase that I've been putting my daisies in for the last 10 years. Yeah. It's a Ming vase. It's worth 8 million quid.
Well, sometimes they are.
Stuff. Yes, well, very rarely. The most famous one is the last show of Only Fools and Horses, isn't it? When they found the watch in the garage.
I don't know Only Fools and Horses terribly well.
Well, I don't know terribly well. Well, I was a bit of a fan. I just don't like watching the repeats.
I was living in America when it was on.
Yeah, okay. Well,
so I don't really know that well.
I mean, his favourite expression all the way through is, "Don't worry, Rodney. This time next year we'll all be millionaires."
Yeah, right.
Right.
That I've heard. Yeah.
And then I think Uncle somebody dies or whatever. And they're going through his stuff in the garage and they found a pocket watch. And, one of their dodgy mates happens to be passing and says, "Oh, you want to take that to auction, that looks like worth a few bob to me." And of course, Doughboy says, "Yeah, all right, Rodney, we will. Okay, Rodney, come on, we're going to go." So they take it to the auction house, whichever one it is, and the bloke's already looked at it and said, "Yeah, this could be." And they're standing in the auction house, and the bidding starts at, sort of £1,600. Right. And by the time it's gone up to 6 million, they've both fainted. They've both keeled over, got up.
Right.
And it's still going up and fainted again.
Right.
And then, of course, it closes with a mansion and a Rolls-Royce and all that. And Del Boy...
So they finally made it.
I told you, Rodney, one of these days we've been millionaires. And now we are.
And then that was the end of the show.
Well, as far as I recall, but there might have been sequels since then.
I was going to say, surely somebody would have gone, well, now we have to do the next bit, which is them living as wealthy people in Stockbroker Belt, Surrey.
But that wouldn't work, you see, because that wasn't Only Fools and Horses, and they were starting to get a bit old by then, to be honest. So it was a great way for John Sullivan, who was the writer, to close it all down.
Yeah, very possibly so.
Yeah.
Now, we are the Two Mikes, of course, on talkSPORT with Wix. Every day we give away £100 gift card to Wix, to the best caller. Today's winner was Jack, the Everton fan.
Yeah, great.
Who said that players should be fined or suspended if they force through a transfer, and he was particularly talking about Lukaku.
Yes, he was.
Who may or may not be on his way out of Everton. I'm still of the mind, and I know that this sounds ridiculous.
Well, no, it's an intriguing theory.
My theory is that he's not actually going anywhere, but he's just kind of teasing everyone.
Yes.
And I wonder what Everton fans' reaction will be if it turns out that he actually isn't going anywhere, and he said all these things just to kind of unsettle them.
Yeah, well,
it would be weird, wouldn't it?
Who knows? I'm glad it's gone to young Jack, because he's nearly 80.
Yeah, young Jack.
Yeah, from Runcorn, and a lifelong Everton fan. So, Jack, that's great, and I hope you'll get over to Goodison again next season at your very, very healthy age.
Absolutely right. Now, we've got quite a busy sort of 24 hours coming up.
We sure have.
So we should probably explain. I know that you've done a bit of explaining.
Well, you keep telling me not to explain.
Well, no. The only thing I've done is the last two shows that we've done is for you to not launch immediately that we start the show into what we're doing tonight.
I think I have a
responsibility. What we're doing tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the show that we've just done, I think it's entirely appropriate to tell people when we'll be on next.
Okay.
So would you like to tell them?
Yeah, we'll be on next at 1 a.m. Friday. So that's like tonight, and then over midnight into 1 a.m., as I'm sure you'll understand. What are you laughing at?
I don't know why you can't just explain it.
Well, I'll explain it. And then we're going to work 5 hours down to 6 a.m.
Yeah, right.
When I think it's Max, isn't it, coming on to do the
Max
breakfast show.
Russell will be here on Breakfast with Ray Wilkins.
They pick up there. And then we will then shuffle off to the Savoy for a bit of breakfast, maybe a glass of
we might not go to the Savoy.
We might not. We might go somewhere else. We'll be back at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And then... On this show, but to be honest, we don't know what we're going to be doing because we don't know what's going to happen tonight.
Right.
So it'll be an interpretation of the night's events, along with keeping you right up to date and right in touch with all that's going on in the world, sports-wise and others.
There we are. It couldn't have been put better myself.
Exactly.
This is talkSPORT. Don't forget to follow the Two Mikes at the Two Mikes on Twitter and on YouTube. Just look for Two Mikes TV.